What if the past holds secrets we were never meant to uncover? Across deserts, mountains, and oceans lie silent relics that defy everything we think we know about history. Stone structures too massive for ancient hands, artifacts carved with knowledge centuries ahead of their time, and skeletal remains that whisper stories science still cannot explain. These discoveries don't fit neatly into textbooks. They challenge timelines, rewrite assumptions, and leave even the most brilliant minds with more questions than answers. Why does a 2,000-year-old skull bear traces of advanced surgery? How did colossal blocks, each weighing hundreds of tons, end up stacked with precision no modern crane could match? And who, or what, left behind cryptic symbols carved into stones older than recorded civilization itself? These are not myths, not legends. These are mysteries that science meets with silence. Tonight, we'll journey into the shadows of history, peeling back the layers of time to confront the inexplicable. So sit back, open your mind, and let's dive into the world of archaeological mysteries science still cannot explain.
In the dimly lit halls of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo rests one of the most haunting relics of the ancient world. Among rows of silent sarcophagi and carefully preserved remains, there is one mummy that captures the gaze like no other. Its face is frozen in eternal anguish. The jaw locked wide open, lips pulled back, teeth bared in what appears to be a scream. The linen wrappings around its body are discolored, pulled loose, as if resisting the stillness of death. It is known simply as the Screaming Mummy. This body was discovered in 1881 in a secret cache near Deir el-Bahari, where priests of the 21st dynasty reburied royal mummies to protect them from tomb robbers. Among the kings, queens, and high priests lay this mysterious figure. Unlike the regal stillness of Ramses or the serene expressions of others, his countenance radiated torment. From the moment it was uncovered, scholars and onlookers alike wondered, what story could possibly lie behind such a disturbing face? Modern examination suggests the mummy belonged to a young man, perhaps in his 20s or early 30s. His body showed no signs of the careful embalming practices that defined ancient Egyptian burial rites. Instead, the corpse seemed hastily treated, wrapped in sheepskin, an unclean material by Egyptian standards, and placed in the tomb without the traditional care of preservation. His organs were not removed. His flesh, at the time of discovery, was poorly preserved, as though denied the respect given to the honored dead. For ancient Egyptians, whose beliefs about the afterlife depended on careful preparation of the body, this would have been a fate worse than death. Who was this man, and why was he buried in such disgrace among pharaohs and nobles? One theory points to Prince Pentawere, the son of Pharaoh Ramses III. Historical records describe a scandal known as the Harem Conspiracy, a plot in which one of Ramses' secondary wives attempted to overthrow the king and place her son, Pentawere, on the throne. Ancient papyri recount the trials of conspirators who faced execution or forced suicide. Could the Screaming Mummy be Pentor, condemned to take his own life and denied a proper burial as punishment for treason? The evidence seems to align. Genetic testing has linked the Screaming Mummy to the royal bloodline of Ramses III. His open mouth may not have been a scream at all, but the final position of a body that had not been properly closed by mortuary priests, left frozen in the moment of death. Yet, others suggest more mysterious explanations. Was the face twisted by agony in the very moment of death? Perhaps the result of poisoning? Or was this the natural effect of decomposition in a body abandoned without full embalming? Some argue the wide mouth could be explained by gravity, the jaw slackening as muscles deteriorated, creating the illusion of a scream. In this view, the terror is in our interpretation, not in the man himself. But the details refuse to let the mystery rest. Why wrap him in sheepskin, a symbol of impurity? Why bury him in the same cache as great rulers, if his memory was meant to be erased? Was this an act of reluctant compassion by priests, punishing him with disgrace, yet ensuring his body was not lost to the desert? Or was there something deeper at work, a struggle within the royal family itself, where politics, betrayal, and ritual intersected in ways we still do not fully understand? The face itself continues to challenge us. Staring into it, one cannot help but feel the presence of suffering, real or imagined, etched into those dry, contorted features. If this is truly Pentawar, then his is the face of a prince condemned not only in life, but in death, left to wander eternity with no peace. If it is not him, then it is someone else, someone whose identity remains unknown, their story silenced but for this terrifying mask.
Archaeologists and forensic experts continue to probe the mummy with modern technology. CT scans, DNA analysis, and chemical testing, yet no single conclusion can erase the lingering aura of uncertainty. Perhaps science will one day answer the questions. Was he poisoned? Did he hang himself? Was he buried alive, as some whisper in speculation? Or is the scream merely an illusion, the trick of time and decay? For now, the mummy rests, displayed to the world, confronting each visitor with that silent, eternal cry. It is a reminder that even in an age where science can probe molecules and genomes, there are stories the past refuses to surrender. And so, the screaming mummy lies in shadow, half man, half myth, beckoning us to wonder, is this the true face of betrayal, of punishment, of forgotten ritual? Or is it something far stranger, a glimpse into a chapter of history we have not yet uncovered? As we leave behind the haunting image of the screaming mummy, a face frozen in eternal torment, we journey now from the sands of Egypt to the quiet landscapes of New England. Here, far from the grandeur of pharaohs and temples, lies a mystery of an entirely different kind. Not a mummy, not a monument, but a small, unassuming artifact. One that has puzzled researchers for well over a century. It is known today as the Dorchester Pot. The story begins in the summer of 1851 in Dorchester, Massachusetts. Workers were blasting rock at Meeting House Hill, searching for stone to use in construction. The explosion shattered layers of ancient bedrock, sending fragments flying in every direction. But when the dust settled, among the debris lay something no one expected, the broken halves of a metallic vessel, unlike anything the men had ever seen. The object was described in newspapers of the time with striking detail. It was about 4.5 inches high, 6.5 inches wide at the base, narrowing toward the top, shaped somewhat like a bell or a small vase. The surface was dark, almost slate-colored, with a silvery sheen that caught the light. What drew the most attention, however, was its decoration. Etched into the sides were intricate floral patterns, delicate in form, carefully executed, as though by the hand of a skilled craftsman. But the most confounding aspect was not its beauty. It was its context. The pot, according to reports, had been found encased in solid rock. The stone it emerged from was described as pudding stone, a kind of ancient conglomerate believed at the time to date back millions of years. How, then, could an object of obvious human manufacture be discovered sealed within it? The Dorchester Pot was soon brought to public attention. Newspapers carried stories of its discovery, marveling at both its craftsmanship and its mysterious origins. Some speculated it was a relic of Native American artisans, though the material and style did not match known examples. Others suggested it was an ancient Asian object that somehow found its way into New England long before European contact. But if so, how had it come to be entombed in rock so ancient? Here lies the heart of the mystery. If the account is accurate, if the pot truly was found within undisturbed stone, then it raises troubling questions. Was it evidence that human civilization stretches back far earlier than we currently believe? Or was it, as skeptics argue, a case of mistaken observation, an object that simply became lodged in a crack or fissure, later sealed by natural processes? Modern geology provides some possible explanations. Pudding stone, though ancient, can fracture and reform, filling gaps with new minerals. Perhaps the pot had slipped into such a cavity and was mistakenly thought to be embedded in solid rock. Critics point out that detailed scientific study of the find was never conducted, and the pot itself eventually vanished, leaving only written descriptions and sketches. Without physical evidence to examine, much of the debate rests on the reliability of 19th century reports. Yet even with such cautious interpretations, the Dorchester pot refuses to fade into obscurity. The intricacy of its design suggests intentional artistry, perhaps even technology, beyond what one might expect from indigenous groups of the region at that time. Was it truly a native artifact, overlooked in stylistic analysis? Or could it have been something far older, belonging to a forgotten chapter of human history now lost to us? Some fringe researchers have taken the story further, placing the pot within a category they call out-of-place artifacts, objects that seem to exist outside the accepted timeline of human development. To them, the Dorchester pot might hint at advanced civilizations that predated known history, their remnants scattered in ways mainstream archaeology has yet to acknowledge. Others have wondered if it was a trade object carried across vast distances in an age when transoceanic contact was not supposed to exist. Still others imagine natural cataclysms, burying traces of cultures long erased from memory. Of course, without the artifact itself, such theories remain speculation. What remains undeniable is the allure of the account. A pot, beautiful and refined, discovered in circumstances that should have made its presence impossible. The image lingers, stone shattering under the force of explosives, and from its heart emerging not crude rubble, but art. The Dorchester pot now lives in the shadowy space between legend and evidence, documented in periodicals, but absent from museums, unverified by modern science. Was it misplaced reporting? An error born of enthusiasm and misunderstanding? Or was it a fleeting glimpse of something extraordinary, a relic of a past far deeper and stranger than we dare to imagine? In the end, the mystery remains unresolved. The artifact is gone, leaving behind only descriptions and questions, and perhaps that is why it continues to fascinate. For it reminds us that history is not always neat, not always complete. Sometimes a single object, small, fragile, and easily lost, can open a window into the unknown. And so, like the haunting cry of the screaming mummy, the Dorchester pot whispers across time. Was it a lost piece of human artistry, a misplaced object woven into legend? Or was it something more, a forgotten voice from a civilization erased by the passage of ages? The truth lies buried, perhaps forever, in the stone and soil of the earth. From a shattered pot hidden within the rocks of New England, our path now leads us back across oceans and millennia to the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia. Here, in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates, humanity first began to record its thoughts, its laws, its myths, pressed into clay with the sharp wedge of a reed stylus. These fragments, preserved for thousands of years, are known to us as cuneiform tablets. And among them, some of the most enigmatic are those that speak of the Anunnaki. The word itself carries a weight of mystery. Anunnaki, often translated as those who came down from the heavens. In Mesopotamian mythology, they were divine beings, associated with both creation and judgment, the arbiters of fate. The tablets that reference them come from Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria, spanning centuries of evolving culture. To the ancient scribes, the Anunnaki were not a single story, but a recurring presence, appearing in myths that shaped the worldview of some of the earliest civilizations. The tablets describe them as a pantheon of deities, born of the sky god Anu. They presided over the underworld, the heavens, and the ordering of human life. In the great Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, the Anunnaki are judges of the dead. In creation stories, they help shape humanity itself. Yet the details are fragmented, layered in symbolism, shifting from one city-state to another. Who, then, were the Anunnaki in the eyes of the people who first spoke their names? For mainstream historians, the answer is clear enough. These were gods, mythological constructs that reflected the structure of society and the forces of nature. In a land where the rivers brought both abundance and destruction, where kings ruled with divine authority, the Anunnaki embodied the power beyond human control. Their stories were part of a religious tradition, no more literal than the gods of Greece or Egypt. And yet, the tablets leave room for questions. Some passages seem strangely precise, describing the Anunnaki not merely as spirits, but as beings who descended from the sky, who bestowed knowledge, who lived among humans before retreating to the heavens. Why did these early cultures describe their gods in such earthly terms? Were these simply poetic metaphors, or echoes of something the ancients believed they had truly witnessed? It is here that alternative interpretations take root. Over the past century, some researchers have suggested that the Anunnaki were not gods at all, but visitors, perhaps from another world. The most famous of these theories was advanced by author Zecharia Sitchin in the 20th century. By reinterpreting the tablets, he argued that the Anunnaki were beings from a distant planet, Nibiru, who came to Earth in antiquity. According to his reading, they created humanity through genetic engineering, shaping early humans to serve as workers in their quest for resources. Such claims remain highly controversial, dismissed by most scholars as misinterpretations of the original texts. Linguists and archaeologists caution that Sitchin's translations are flawed, and that the tablets, when read in their historical and cultural context, speak clearly of myth, not extraterrestrial intervention. And yet, the allure of the idea persists. After all, why did the Sumerians, among the very first to develop writing, agriculture, and urban society, imagine their gods as descending from the sky with advanced knowledge? Why does their mythology so often blend the celestial with the earthly, the divine with the technological? Even within accepted scholarship, mysteries remain. The Sumerians were astonishingly advanced for their time. Their tablets detail complex mathematics, astronomical observations, and sophisticated legal codes. Did their myths of the Anunnaki simply reflect a deep fascination with the heavens? Or do they hint at encounters, whether real or imagined, that left an indelible mark on human memory? The physicality of the tablets themselves adds to the enigma. Thousands of them, etched with wedge-shaped impressions, still lie in museums and archives, many untranslated, many overlooked. Each new decipherment adds fragments to a vast, unfinished puzzle. Could there be lines, still hidden in those undeciphered texts, that would reshape how we understand the Anunnaki? Or would they confirm only what mainstream historians already maintain, that these were the gods of myth, nothing more? Standing before a tablet in the British Museum, one cannot help but feel the weight of time pressing from its surface. The symbols are simple, yet precise, carrying voices across 5,000 years. To the people who carved them, the Anunnaki were real, powerful, and ever-present. Whether divine, symbolic, or something beyond our imagination, their influence shaped the very beginnings of human civilization. And so, the mystery endures. Were the Anunnaki merely stories, metaphors woven into the fabric of early societies? Were they distant stars personified as gods? Or were they something stranger still? Beings whose memory lingers in clay, waiting for us to listen with new ears. As with the Dorchester Pot, the answers slip through our fingers, leaving only the questions. Questions that remind us how fragile our understanding of the past truly is, and how much may still lie hidden in the tablets, waiting to be revealed. From the clay tablets of ancient Mesopotamia, where gods and mysteries were pressed into stone thousands of years ago, we turn now to a quieter corner of the modern world. Far from the deserts of Sumer, nestled in the rolling landscapes of New England, lies a lake whose waters have mirrored the sky for centuries. Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire. It is here, near these still waters, that another enigma emerged, an artifact both beautiful and perplexing, known simply as the Mystery Stone. Discovered in 1872 during excavation work, the object immediately puzzled those who beheld it. The stone is small, roughly egg-shaped, smooth to the touch, and dark in color. It measures about 4 inches long, and though modest in size, its craftsmanship reveals a striking complexity. Both sides of the object are carved with symbolic images. On one side, an arc, possibly a crescent, depictions of arrows, a circle with 3 figures inside, and patterns resembling celestial motifs. On the other, an ear of corn and other agricultural designs, alongside geometric shapes whose meaning has long been debated. Unlike naturally polished stones shaped by rivers or glaciers, this object was clearly worked by human hands. Its surface bears the precision of deliberate carving, its form symmetrical, as though created with patience and care. But what makes it so confounding is not just the artistry. It is the fact that no one can say, with confidence, who made it, when, or why. At the time of its discovery, the Mystery Stone was turned over to local historians, and eventually to the New Hampshire Historical Society, where it remains to this day. Scholars examined it carefully, noting the symbols, the craftsmanship, and the strangeness of its form. Some suggested it was a Native American artifact, perhaps a ceremonial object or a token of alliance between tribes. Others argued its style was unlike anything produced by local cultures, pointing instead to influences from Mesoamerica or even across the ocean. Adding to the puzzle are 2 unusual drilled holes, one passing vertically through the stone from top to bottom, and another smaller one, precisely angled from the side to meet it. The workmanship of these holes is unusually refined, almost machine-like in their smoothness. For the 19th century, this detail alone seemed extraordinary. How could such precision have been achieved, if indeed the object was of great antiquity? Some archaeologists have argued that the stone may not be ancient at all, but a 19th century creation, perhaps even a hoax. Could it have been carved by a local craftsman and accidentally or deliberately planted in the soil where it was found? If so, why? To trick, to amuse, or to memorialize something now forgotten? But skeptics face their own challenges, for no definitive evidence of forgery has ever been established. The object remains what it has always been, an outlier. Others take a different view. If authentic, the Mystery Stone may represent a cultural connection far older and wider than previously believed. Were these carvings meant to symbolize the harmony between sky and earth, hunting and farming, life and death? Could it have been a tribal marker, a gift, or a talisman carried for generations? Some researchers point out that the stone's motifs of celestial arcs and agriculture are universal themes found in many ancient traditions. But if so, why this particular combination? And why craft it into the shape of an egg, a symbol of life, creation, and eternity in many cultures across the world? The more speculative theories reach further still. Some suggest the Mystery Stone may be evidence of early transoceanic contact, an artifact brought by voyagers from far-off lands long before Columbus. Others whisper of connections to lost civilizations, pointing to its precision-drilled holes as signs of technologies we cannot fully explain. Was it a ceremonial object of a forgotten people? Or could it be something stranger still, a relic of a culture erased by time, its story carried only in this single piece of carved stone? Standing before the Mystery Stone today, displayed under glass in Concord, New Hampshire, one is struck less by its size than by its silence. It sits quietly, neither confirming nor denying the theories that surround it. The carvings remain mute symbols, open to endless interpretation. Was it meant to record a story, to honor a deity, to mark an alliance? Or was it simply an object of art, stripped of meaning by the erosion of memory? Like the Anunnaki tablets, it offers fragments without answers, glimpses of thought and belief without context. And like the Dorchester Pot, it raises questions about what may still lie buried beneath the ground, waiting to be unearthed. Perhaps the stone is nothing more than a curious artifact of local origin, misinterpreted and magnified by our hunger for mystery. Or perhaps it is something far more, an echo of human creativity, stretching across cultures and ages, preserved in the most unassuming of forms. The Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone remains exactly what its name suggests, a mystery. A quiet, enduring riddle that continues to invite speculation, fascination, and wonder. And so, as the waters of Winnipesaukee lap against the shores, reflecting the endless sky above, one cannot help but ask, how many other secrets lie hidden beneath the soil, waiting for their chance to resurface and remind us that history is never as complete as we imagine? From the quiet waters of New England, where a small carved stone continues to puzzle researchers, we journey now to a land steeped in both legend and history, the mountains and valleys of Lebanon. Here, overlooking the fertile Bekaa Valley, lies the ancient city of Baalbek. Its ruins are among the most impressive of the ancient world, towering columns, vast courtyards, and temples once dedicated to Jupiter, Bacchus, and Venus during the Roman Empire. But hidden among these majestic remains is a mystery that dwarfs almost every other, an enigma not of myth, but of sheer, overwhelming stone. Just beyond the temple complex, in a nearby quarry, rests what is often called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. Rectangular in shape, partially buried in the earth, it measures over 70 feet in length and weighs an estimated 1,000 tons. And as if this were not enough, excavations in recent decades have uncovered another block still larger, estimated at more than 1,600 tons, one of the heaviest stones ever carved by human hands. The scale is almost incomprehensible. To put it in perspective, each of these stones outweighs the largest blocks used in the Great Pyramid of Giza several times over. Yet here they are, lying silent in a quarry, their surfaces cut with astonishing precision. And within the nearby foundations of Baalbek's great temples are similar blocks already set into place. Colossal stones aligned so seamlessly that even today, centuries after earthquakes and erosion, their joints remain tight and true. The questions arise naturally. How were such massive stones cut, moved, and positioned in antiquity? What tools, what methods, what sheer determination could have accomplished such a feat? And perhaps most puzzling of all, why? Mainstream archaeology offers some answers. The Roman Empire, which occupied the region and built extensively at Baalbek, was renowned for its engineering skill. With sufficient manpower, ingenuity, and time, it is argued, the Romans could have devised systems of levers, rollers, pulleys, and ramps to move even stones of this size. Indeed, they left behind structures across Europe and the Middle East that testify to their technical brilliance. Yet doubts remain. The largest of the Baalbek stones, still lying in its quarry bed, appears never to have been moved at all, perhaps abandoned because its size proved impractical even for Roman methods. But in the temple foundations nearby, other blocks, each weighing hundreds of tons, were successfully transported and set in place. How exactly this was achieved has never been definitively explained. Were wooden rollers strong enough to bear such weight? Could manpower alone, even in the tens of thousands, generate the force needed? Some calculations suggest otherwise. The enigma deepens when we consider the site's pre-Roman history. Baalbek was already sacred ground long before the Romans arrived. Local legends tell of gods and giants building here in the distant past. Some scholars suggest that the Romans may have built their temples atop far older foundations, reusing megaliths left by earlier cultures. But if true, who could have placed them, and how long ago? It is here that speculation begins to reach beyond conventional archaeology. Some theorists propose that advanced techniques, now lost to time, were once known to ancient builders. Could they have possessed methods of lifting and moving stone that have since disappeared from human memory? Others look to the myths of giants, interpreting them not as mere legend, but as symbolic echoes of forgotten peoples with extraordinary abilities. And then there are those who suggest something even more radical, that the Baalbek stones point to knowledge or assistance from beyond the human realm. In this view, the megaliths are not simply a testament to Roman or pre-Roman skill, but to something far stranger, evidence, perhaps, of contact with beings who possessed technology beyond our own. Such ideas remain on the fringes of scholarship, yet they persist, fueled by the sheer scale of the stones themselves. Standing before the quarry at Baalbek, one is struck by both awe and silence. The massive blocks lie half embedded in the earth, their edges still sharp despite the passage of centuries. They feel unfinished, as though the workers have just stepped away, leaving behind a puzzle for future generations to ponder. The ruins of the temples nearby, their towering columns casting long shadows across the valley, only heighten the sense of mystery. Did the Romans truly conceive and execute this design on their own? Or were they inheriting, and perhaps struggling to replicate, something much older? The giant stone of Baalbek remains a monument to human ambition, whether Roman or pre-Roman, but it is also a reminder of how much we still do not know. Was the decision to carve such vast blocks born of necessity, of ritual significance, or of a challenge to rival the gods themselves? Was the unfinished stone abandoned simply because it was too heavy to move? Or does its immobility hint at a forgotten story, a project halted by forces we can no longer trace? As the sun sets over the Bekaa Valley, painting the ruins in gold and shadow, the stones rest in silence. They do not reveal their secrets. Instead, they invite questions about technology, about belief, about the very nature of human history. Like the mystery stone of Winnipesaukee, like the tablets of Mesopotamia, the Baalbek megaliths confront us with the limits of our understanding. They stand as both achievement and riddle, challenging us to look deeper into the past. And so the question lingers, are these stones merely the product of extraordinary human effort? Or are they a message carved in silence, a reminder of knowledge once held, now lost to the ages? From the towering stones of Baalbek, colossal works of human ambition carved into the earth, we travel now to a very different kind of mystery. Not massive monuments that defy the limits of ancient engineering, but objects small enough to fit in the palm of a hand. Objects that seem, at first glance, simple and unremarkable, yet whose age and precision challenge the very boundaries of human history. These are the Klerksdorp Spheres. The story begins deep underground in the mines of South Africa. Near the town of Ottosdal, miners working in pyrophyllite, a soft mineral used in industry, have, for decades, uncovered strange metallic spheres. They range from less than an inch to several inches in diameter. Some are perfectly round, others slightly flattened, yet their forms are strikingly symmetrical. Many are dark reddish-brown, with grooves carved around their circumference. A few even display parallel lines etched so precisely that they seem almost manufactured. At first, they appear to be little more than curiosities, odd mineral formations shaped by natural processes. But what makes them remarkable is the context in which they were found. The rock layers that encased them are estimated to be around 3 billion years old. Long before humans existed, long before complex life had even begun to flourish, these spheres were already locked in stone. The implications are unsettling. How could objects of such apparent design, with ridges and symmetry, appear in geological deposits dating back to the earliest chapters of Earth's history? Were they formed entirely by natural forces? Or are they evidence of something else, something we cannot easily explain? Scientists who have studied the spheres offer cautious explanations. Some suggest they are concretions, natural mineral growths formed over immense spans of time, shaped by pressure, heat, and chemical reactions. The grooves and markings, in this view, are the result of natural layering, erosion, or fracturing within the rock. To them, the mystery lies not in human craftsmanship, but in the remarkable capacity of nature to create patterns that mimic design. And yet, the debate continues. The level of symmetry in some spheres seems, to the naked eye, too precise for chance alone. Certain examples appear balanced enough that, when tested, they could spin on their axis as if engineered. Could geological processes alone have produced such forms? Or do these objects hint at knowledge or activity far older than our current understanding of civilization? Here, the more speculative theories take root. Some researchers argue that the spheres may be remnants of a lost, unimaginably ancient culture, evidence that intelligent life existed on Earth long before recorded history. Others have gone further, suggesting the possibility of extraterrestrial origins. Were these spheres tools, artifacts, or even components of some unknown technology left behind in a time when the Earth itself was still young? Mainstream science remains skeptical. The absence of direct evidence, no inscriptions, no traces of deliberate shaping, makes it difficult to support claims of artificial origin. And yet, those who have held the spheres in their hands often speak of a feeling difficult to shake, that these small, heavy objects do not belong, that they carry with them a story our current timeline cannot account for. Adding to the intrigue is the fact that not all spheres are identical. Some are metallic, composed of harder materials that resist scratching, while others are softer, crumbling under pressure. Could it be that different processes, both natural and otherwise, contributed to their formation? Or does this variety point to multiple origins, some more ordinary, some less so? In museums and private collections, the Klerksdorp Spheres remain objects of fascination. Displayed under glass, they seem almost unassuming. Yet when the accompanying placard reminds us of their supposed age, billions of years, the mind struggles to reconcile what it sees with what it knows. These are not artifacts pulled from the ruins of temples or tombs. They are objects born somehow from the very bedrock of the earth in an age when humanity did not exist. The question then lingers: what exactly are they? Are they natural marvels, testaments to the artistry of geology itself? Are they signs of processes we do not yet fully understand? Or are they fragments of something lost, evidence of a chapter of history erased before history itself began? Standing in the mines where they were first uncovered, surrounded by walls of ancient stone, one cannot help but feel the weight of deep time pressing in. To hold a Klerksdorp sphere is to cradle an object older than mountains, older than the continents as we know them. Whether natural or crafted, it is a reminder of how small our place is in the vast span of Earth's story. And yet, in their silence, these spheres provoke more than humility. They provoke wonder. They challenge us to look beyond the obvious, to ask questions that may not have simple answers. Like the colossal stones of Baalbek, like the enigmatic carvings of the Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, the Klerksdorp Spheres blur the line between the known and the unknown. And so, the mystery endures. Are these spheres merely accidents of geology shaped by time and pressure into forms that trick the human eye? Or are they relics of something far stranger, forgotten traces of intelligence, whether human or otherwise, from a time before time itself? From the silence of deep geological time, where the Klerksdorp Spheres left us questioning the very origins of human history, we move now to something more immediate, more visceral. Not ancient stones or artifacts shaped by nature, but human remains. Bones, carefully unearthed, that tell a story of violence, ritual, and unanswered questions. A story that unfolded on the southern coast of England, in a place now known for its rolling fields and calm countryside. Yet beneath this quiet landscape lies one of the most chilling archaeological discoveries of recent decades, the Headless Vikings of Dorset. The scene was first uncovered in 2009 during construction work for a roadway near Weymouth in the county of Dorset. Archaeologists were called to the site after workers stumbled upon human bones. What they found shocked even seasoned experts. A mass grave, hastily dug into the chalky soil, containing the remains of 51 young men. Their skeletons were jumbled together, piled with little care, as though discarded after a single catastrophic event. And most striking of all, every body was missing its head. Nearby, the skulls were discovered, separated from the bodies and arranged in a separate pile. Some were intact. Others bore marks of deep cuts and blows. The bones told a story of brutality, decapitation by sword, axe, or blade. The men, mostly in their teens and 20s, appeared to have been executed in a single episode. Carbon dating revealed that the grave dated to between the late 10th and early 11th centuries, a time of intense conflict in England's history. Viking raiders, warriors from Scandinavia, were launching incursions along the coasts, while Anglo-Saxon kingdoms struggled to defend their lands. The men buried here were almost certainly Vikings. Analysis of their teeth suggested origins in northern Europe, consistent with Norway, Sweden, or Denmark. But the mystery begins where the facts leave off. Why were they killed in such a way? Why beheaded, and why buried en masse, far from any known battlefield? One explanation is that these were captured raiders, executed by local Anglo-Saxons as punishment for their attacks. The separation of the skulls may have been symbolic, an act of humiliation, stripping the warriors of their identity, ensuring they would not be honored in death. In Viking culture, burial rites were deeply significant. To be denied proper burial could be seen as condemning the soul itself. Could this mass decapitation have been a deliberate statement, a warning to others who might attempt to invade? And yet, the burial itself raises further questions. The bodies were not carefully interred, as one might expect from an execution carried out under the watch of justice. They were dumped, almost carelessly, into the pit. Could this suggest haste, or perhaps fear? Were the Anglo-Saxons disposing of the remains quickly, worried that other Viking forces might retaliate if they found the site? Alternatively, some scholars have considered the possibility of ritual. Execution, after all, was not always just practical. In early medieval Europe, punishment could take on symbolic or religious overtones. The act of beheading might have been more than justice. It might have been ceremony. Was this slaughter part of a ritual sacrifice, an offering to divine forces in a time of chaos? There is also the question of the men themselves. Were they truly warriors? Analysis of their bones revealed signs of healed injuries consistent with combat, but others showed little evidence of a life spent fighting. Some were strikingly young, barely more than boys. Could they have been a raiding party caught off guard, or something else? A group of captives, perhaps traitors mistaken for raiders, executed not for their deeds but for their origin? Even the arrangement of the skulls provokes debate. Why set them apart from the bodies? Was it a display, a grim trophy, meant to remind onlookers of victory? Or was it a practical decision, the result of the method of execution? A pile of skulls sends a chilling message, one that echoes across the centuries. In the chalk pit where they were found, the air is still heavy with the questions their deaths left behind. To stand there is to imagine the cries of men, the flash of steel, the earth stained with blood. Yet the silence of the grave tells us little of motive. All we can do is piece together fragments and patterns, drawing connections that may never fully resolve. The Headless Vikings of Dorset remind us that history is not just written in books or carved into monuments. It is etched into the bones of those who lived and died. Their remains testify to conflict, but also to something deeper, the human capacity for both violence and ritual. Were they punished invaders, caught in the ruthless machinery of war? Were they victims of fear and vengeance? Or did their deaths serve some darker symbolic purpose, one that even now eludes our understanding? And so, the mystery endures. In the rolling hills of southern England, beneath the soil that has seen centuries pass, these young men remain both known and unknowable. Their bones speak of violence, but their story, why it happened and what it meant, remains unfinished. What other secrets might still lie buried beneath fields and roads, waiting to surface? And when they do, will we recognize them for what they are? Or will they, like the Headless Vikings of Dorset, leave us with more questions than answers? From the violent spectacle of the Headless Vikings in Dorset, bones scattered in the soil, a story of blood and vengeance, we travel northward to a quieter and more haunting discovery. A body not discarded in haste, but preserved with eerie perfection. A face, not skeletal, but still bearing the calm expression of a man who died more than 2,000 years ago. His skin darkened by the earth, his features softened by time, yet unmistakably human. This is the Tollund Man, Denmark's most famous bog body, a window into the shadows of prehistory. The discovery came in 1950 in the peat bogs near Silkeborg. Two brothers, cutting turf, struck something unusual in the soil. At first, they thought it was a recent corpse, so lifelike were the features of the man curled within the peat. His eyes were closed, his lips gently pressed together, his chin resting on his chest. The police were called, expecting a crime scene. But when archaeologists arrived, they realized the truth. This was not a modern body. This man had lain undisturbed for more than 2 millennia, preserved by the unique chemistry of the bog. The Tollund Man is one of the best preserved examples of a bog body, a phenomenon found across northern Europe. Peat bogs, rich in sphagnum moss, create an oxygen-poor, acidic environment that halts decay. Flesh, hair, even clothing can survive the centuries. In Tollund Man's case, his stubbled beard, his closed eyelids, and the delicate lines of his face remain visible today. It is a preservation so vivid that to look at him is to feel as though he might simply be sleeping. But Tollund Man was not resting. Around his neck, archaeologists found a noose, carefully tied from plaited leather. His body showed no other signs of violence. He had not been buried in the usual sense. Rather, he was placed in the bog, naked except for a pointed cap and a simple belt. It was clear that this was no ordinary death. Why was he killed? Scholars have debated the question for decades. One explanation is ritual sacrifice. During the Iron Age, communities across Europe held complex religious beliefs, often centered on fertility, the cycles of the land, and the appeasement of gods or spirits. Human sacrifice while rare, was not unknown. Could Tollund Man have been offered to the gods, a life given in exchange for good harvests or safe passage through the seasons? The careful placement of his body, the calm expression on his face, these details suggest intention, not accident. Others argue he may have been executed, punished for a crime or social transgression. The noose around his neck, they say, could represent justice, not ritual. But if he was a criminal, why preserve him in such a careful, almost reverent manner? Why place him in the bog, where his body would not burn or rot, but endure? The forensic details complicate the story further. His stomach still contained traces of his last meal, a porridge of grains and seeds, nothing poisoned, nothing unusual. His hands were not calloused, suggesting he may not have been a common laborer. Was he a figure of status, someone chosen or condemned for reasons we can no longer fully grasp? And then there is his face. Unlike the violence etched into the bones of the Headless Vikings, Tollund Man's expression is strangely serene. The lips are gently closed, the features relaxed, as though death came quietly. Did he accept his fate willingly, as part of a ritual he believed in? Or is this simply how the bog preserved him, freezing his final moment in deceptive tranquility? The Tollund Man is not alone. Across Denmark, Ireland, the Netherlands, and Germany, other bog bodies have been found, some strangled, some stabbed, some bludgeoned, many placed with care into the earth. Together, they suggest a cultural pattern, a practice of sacrifice or ritual execution carried out in sacred landscapes. But the exact reasons remain hidden. Were these offerings to gods of the land, punishments disguised as rituals, or something more complex, something we cannot yet interpret with modern eyes? The bogs themselves add to the mystery. They were liminal spaces, neither land nor water, places that seemed to exist between worlds. To place a body there was to send it into a threshold, a zone of transition. Did ancient people see these bogs as gateways to another realm, where offerings could be delivered directly to the divine? If so, Tollund Man was not just killed. He was sent, dispatched into a spiritual landscape we struggle now to reconstruct. Standing before his preserved face today, in the Silkeborg Museum, is an unsettling experience. Unlike the distant abstractions of stone tools or broken pottery, Tollund Man is immediate, human, familiar. His closed eyes seem to suggest secrets he cannot share. His presence collapses the distance of centuries, reminding us that history is not only about objects, it is about lives lived and lost. Yet even with the wealth of scientific study, the mystery remains unsolved. Was he victim, volunteer, or chosen sacrifice? Was his death an act of devotion, of justice, or of fear? We cannot know for certain. What we do know is that his story was meant to endure, that in some way, through ritual or accident, he has reached across more than 2,000 years to meet our gaze. The Tollund Man is a reminder that not all mysteries are etched in stone or metal. Some are written in flesh, preserved against time itself. His face confronts us with questions of belief, of ritual, of what it meant to live and die in the ancient world. And so we are left to wonder, how many more secrets lie hidden in the bogs beneath the quiet waters and moss? How many lives, preserved in silence, are still waiting to emerge and remind us that the past is never as distant as we imagine? From the preserved stillness of the Tollund Man, his face resting in eternal calm within the peat bogs of Denmark, we journey thousands of miles east to a landscape marked not by a single body, but by thousands of monumental vessels scattered across the land. Here, in the highlands of northern Laos, an ancient mystery stretches across rolling hills and grasslands, a puzzle that has endured for centuries. This is the Plain of Jars. The scene is striking. Across a plateau near the town of Fonsaven, enormous stone jars lie scattered in clusters, some standing upright, others toppled or half buried. They range in size from a meter tall to more than 3 meters, their walls thick and heavy, carved from sandstone, granite, or limestone. Some weigh several tons. Their sheer number is staggering. Over 2,000 jars have been documented, spread across more than 90 sites. The effect is haunting. A silent field of massive vessels, their purpose long forgotten, standing like sentinels on the land. Who made them? And why? Archaeologists have traced their creation back roughly 2,500 years to the Iron Age. But beyond the estimates of age and technique, answers become elusive. The jars bear no inscriptions, no clear markers of origin. They are largely undecorated, save for occasional simple carvings. The absence of writing, of imagery, leaves interpretation wide open. The mainstream theory suggests that the jars were part of ancient funerary practices. Excavations have revealed human remains, tools, and beads in and around some of the sites. Fragments of bone, teeth, and ashes suggest that the jars may once have been used to store the dead, perhaps as part of a 2-stage burial process. Bodies could have been left inside until decomposition was complete, after which bones were removed and interred elsewhere. In this view, the plain of jars was not a place of daily life, but of ritual and remembrance, a vast necropolis dedicated to the ancestors. Yet, questions linger. If the jars were meant for the dead, why so many, spread across such wide distances? Why invest such effort in carving massive stone containers, when smaller and more practical vessels might have sufficed? And why do some jars appear positioned along ancient routes, as though marking paths or boundaries? Other interpretations push beyond funerary practices. Some researchers suggest the jars may have served as storage vessels for food or water, critical resources in a seasonal environment. Could these jars have been granaries, keeping rice safe through long, dry months? Or were they cisterns, collecting rainwater for travelers along ancient trade routes? Then there are the local legends, which tell stories of giants. According to Lao folklore, the jars were created by a race of giants to brew and store rice wine, used to celebrate victories in ancient battles. Another tale suggests the jars were used to collect rainwater for the armies of these giants, who roamed the land in ages past. Though myth, these stories reflect the sense of awe inspired by the jars, the impression that they are beyond the work of ordinary people. Speculative theories extend even further. Some suggest that the jars could have been markers of celestial alignments, laid out in patterns to track the stars or seasons. Others see them as remnants of an advanced, forgotten civilization, their purpose obscured by the passage of time. Without inscriptions, without written records, the jars remain mute, their silence filled by speculation. What makes the mystery even more poignant is the history of the land itself. During the 20th century, the Plain of Jars became one of the most heavily bombed regions on Earth. During the Vietnam War, cluster munitions fell across Laos, leaving behind a deadly legacy. Many of the jar sites remain unsafe to this day, surrounded by unexploded ordnance. Archaeologists must tread carefully, their work slowed by dangers buried just beneath the soil. In a way, the ancient and modern layers of mystery intertwine, stone jars and bomb craters side by side, both shaping the silence of the landscape. To stand among the jars is to feel the weight of both time and absence. The air is quiet, broken only by the wind that sweeps across the plateau. Each jar, hollow and empty, seems to ask a question. Why here? Why this form? What story lies behind these immense vessels, abandoned yet enduring? The Plain of Jars is not alone in its mystery. Across the world, ancient megalithic traditions, Stone circles, standing stones, carved monuments leave us searching for meaning. But here, the enigma feels especially unresolved. These jars, massive yet hollow, seem designed to hold something, and yet today, they hold only air and silence. Were they containers for the dead, bridging the living and the spirit world? Were they tools of survival, holding grain or water in a harsh land? Or were they something else entirely, symbols, markers, or even remnants of a belief system lost to history? Like the Tollund Man's serene face, the jars speak across millennia, but not in words. They leave us with impressions, fragments, unanswered questions. Their makers are gone, their culture dispersed, their meaning obscured. All that remains are the stones themselves, scattered like riddles across the land. And so, the plain of jars continues to resist explanation. Are they funerary urns, granaries, or monuments to a forgotten cosmology? Or do they represent something we have not yet imagined, a practice or a purpose outside our modern frame of reference? Beneath the soil of Laos, amid fields still scarred by war, these silent vessels remain. Their presence challenges us to look beyond what is known, to imagine the lives and beliefs of those who came before. And as with so many mysteries we have explored, the question lingers: what truths lie hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered, or perhaps never meant to be revealed at all? From the scattered jars of northern Laos, whose silent stone vessels hint at practices and beliefs long forgotten, we travel across continents and centuries to a place where stone becomes architecture, where artistry and devotion are carved directly into the living rock. In the highlands of Ethiopia lies Lalibela, a town whose name evokes reverence, wonder, and questions that endure to this day. Here, in the rugged terrain of the Amhara region, one of the most extraordinary feats of human engineering unfolds: the Rock-Hewn churches. The landscape is dramatic: volcanic plateaus, steep hills, and narrow valleys, where ochre-colored soil meets the deep reds and browns of sculpted rock. Carved directly from solid tuff, a type of volcanic stone, 11 churches are interlinked by a network of tunnels and passageways, forming a subterranean labyrinth that seems almost otherworldly. Each church is carved from the top down, hollowed out in a manner that gives the impression of having been sculpted by giants. Exterior walls resemble massive monoliths, while interior chambers contain intricately hewn columns, windows, and altars. The precision is staggering, particularly given the era in which these structures were created, the late 12th and early 13th centuries, according to mainstream historians. The most famous of these churches, Beta Georgis, Church of St. George, is cruciform in shape, perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions. Walk around it, and it feels less like a building and more like a monolith shaped by intention, its clean lines and angles almost mathematically precise. Surrounding it, courtyards and trenches connect the complex, carved so deeply that they create an illusion of floating architecture suspended between earth and sky. Archaeologists and historians agree that the churches were commissioned by King Lalibela, who sought to establish a new Jerusalem for Ethiopia, after Muslim conquests made pilgrimages to the Holy Land perilous. Tradition holds that thousands of workers labored over decades to carve these sacred spaces. Yet the questions begin when one considers the methods. How could men and women, using only chisels, hammers, and rudimentary tools, create structures of such scale, symmetry, and precision, hollowing out entire monoliths while leaving them perfectly intact? How were massive roof sections stabilized before being carved free? And how did workers manage the engineering challenges of drainage, light, and acoustics, all without collapsing the rock? Mainstream explanations emphasize extraordinary human skill, labor organization, and devotion. Ethiopian artisans, it is suggested, may have developed techniques passed down through generations, honed to perfection over centuries. The tuff itself, being relatively soft when freshly quarried, allows for cutting and sculpting before hardening over time. The churches could have been carefully mapped and executed through a combination of practical geometry and masterful craftsmanship. Yet these explanations, though plausible, leave lingering doubts. The sheer audacity of carving entire buildings downward from living rock, the flawless angles, the intricate carvings inside each chamber, suggests a vision and precision that challenge our understanding of medieval technology. Some researchers propose that the king may have had access to lost methods of surveying and construction, techniques so refined they seem almost beyond the age in which they were applied. Speculative theories extend the mystery even further. Some argue that the layout of the churches, tunnels, and trenches may encode symbolic or astronomical significance. Could the positioning of Beta Georgis and its alignment with surrounding churches reflect celestial patterns, a calendar, or even sacred geometry passed down from earlier civilizations? Others wonder whether the underground passageways served not only ritual purposes, but also strategic ones, hidden escape routes, spaces for religious initiation, or sites of clandestine gatherings in times of conflict. The mystique of Lalibela is amplified by the living traditions that persist today. Pilgrims still walk the carved corridors, candlelight flickering across walls, chanting prayers that have echoed through the centuries. The churches are not empty relics, but active centers of faith, adding a layer of spiritual continuity that intertwines with the mysteries of their construction. How much of their design was meant to inspire awe and devotion, and how much remains unexplained by modern measurement and study? Beyond technical questions, the sheer audacity of carving from living rock evokes comparisons to other monumental mysteries we have encountered. Like the massive megaliths of Baalbek, the Klerksdorp Spheres, or the Plain of Jars, Lalibela challenges assumptions about human capabilities and intentions. It forces us to ask, what motivates humans to alter landscapes so profoundly? Is it faith alone, or something deeper? A desire to leave a permanent mark, a message that will endure across millennia. Visitors to Lalibela often describe a disorienting sense of scale. Stand in the shadow of a 12-meter column, and the mind struggles to reconcile the delicacy of the carvings with the mass of the rock. Light filters through narrow slits, casting shifting patterns across walls and floors as if the churches themselves are alive, responding to the sun's path. Every step through the tunnels, every corner turned in the subterranean spaces, reinforces the sense of wonder. These are works not merely built but imagined with extraordinary vision. Some scholars have even suggested that the churches could be part of a continuum of ancient construction knowledge, linked to civilizations whose methods have been lost over time. Could there be techniques passed down through the centuries that allowed for precision carving of living rock, architectural foresight, and geometric alignment without modern instruments? If so, what else might have been achieved in antiquity that remains hidden beneath the surface of history? The questions multiply when considering what may lie undiscovered. Only a fraction of the surrounding plateau has been thoroughly surveyed. Hidden tunnels, chambers, or even entire churches might remain buried, waiting for excavation or erosion to reveal them. Each new find has the potential to shift our understanding, offering glimpses into a past that is simultaneously tangible and unfathomable. Standing in Lalibela today, one is confronted with more than architecture. One is confronted with human ambition, faith, and ingenuity, yet also with the profound limits of our knowledge. The rock-hewn churches are silent teachers, speaking of devotion and daring, of labor and vision, yet refusing to answer fully how such wonders were achieved. And so, Lalibela challenges us in ways both practical and philosophical. How did the builders shape entire structures from living rock with such precision? What knowledge, skill, or inspiration guided their hands? And perhaps most profoundly, what messages were intended to endure, not just in stone, but in the minds and hearts of those who would come centuries later to marvel at their work? As the Ethiopian sun sets over the highlands, casting long shadows across the carved surfaces, the churches glow with a quiet intensity, echoing a mystery that continues to draw pilgrims, scholars, and wanderers alike. Like the Plain of Jars, the Tollund Man, and the giant stones of Baalbek, Lalibela is more than a historical site. It is a question, carved in stone, waiting for human imagination to probe, interpret, and wonder. What secrets remain hidden in these tunnels and chambers? How much knowledge of construction, geometry, and faith has been lost to time? And how many other wonders, like Lalibela, await discovery in the corners of our world, silently challenging the limits of what we believe we know about our ancestors? From the clay tablets of Mesopotamia, inscribed with the enigmatic records of the Anunnaki and the earliest written codices of human civilization, we move southwest to the sun-baked cliffs along the northwestern shores of the Dead Sea. Here, in the rugged wilderness of Palestine, another discovery awaited the modern world, a find that would challenge our understanding of history, religion, and the preservation of knowledge itself. This is the story of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The initial discovery came in 1947 in the small caves of Qumran. A young Bedouin shepherd, tending his goats among the rocky cliffs, stumbled upon a jar partially buried in dust and debris. Inside, he found a collection of ancient scrolls, rolled tightly, their surfaces brittle with age but remarkably preserved. What he held in his hands were manuscripts dating back over 2,000 years, texts that would illuminate, yet simultaneously complicate, our understanding of the Judaic and early Christian worlds. The Dead Sea Scrolls are not a single text, but a collection of hundreds of documents, written primarily on parchment and some on papyrus. They include biblical manuscripts, apocryphal works, sectarian writings, and commentaries on law and prophecy. Many scholars date them between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE, a period of intense religious and social transformation in Judea. The precision and clarity of the writing are striking, the calligraphy meticulously executed, reflecting a culture deeply invested in the transmission of knowledge and tradition. Yet it is not only the content of the scrolls that fascinates, it is the circumstances of their preservation. The scrolls were hidden in the caves, away from cities and settlements, perhaps to protect them from invading forces or internal strife. The arid environment, coupled with the sealed clay jars, created conditions that halted decay, leaving the ink, leather, and papyrus remarkably intact for over 2 millennia. How many other treasures, lost to conflict or time, remain hidden in similar remote locations, waiting to be rediscovered? The scrolls themselves reveal a society both familiar and mysterious. Some manuscripts contain passages nearly identical to texts in the Hebrew Bible, suggesting careful transmission of sacred writings. Others diverge, offering alternate versions, omitted lines, or previously unknown psalms and prayers. Such variations provoke deep questions. How fluid was religious textual tradition in the Second Temple period? What beliefs or practices were preserved by certain groups, yet suppressed or forgotten by others? Of particular intrigue are the sectarian writings, attributed by many scholars to a group known as the Essenes, a monastic and apocalyptic community living in the Judean desert. These texts describe communal living, strict adherence to ritual purity, and eschatological visions of the end times. They provide a rare window into a subculture that existed alongside more widely recognized religious institutions, hinting at a diversity of thought, law, and spiritual practice in a period often simplified in later histories. Yet, questions remain. Why were these scrolls hidden so carefully? Were they saved during a moment of crisis, or were they part of a long-standing tradition of seclusion and preservation? And why did some texts survive while others, perhaps equally significant, were lost to time? The Dead Sea Scrolls confront us with the limits of our knowledge, reminding us that what is preserved may be accidental, fragmentary, or selective. Beyond questions of content and context, the scrolls themselves bear silent testimony to the passage of time. The leather is cracked, the edges frayed, the ink faded in some places yet stubbornly legible in others. Scholars have meticulously pieced together fragments, a painstaking process akin to assembling a vast, multi-dimensional puzzle. Each fragment carries traces of human hands, scribes whose labor spanned decades, who inscribed their beliefs, laws, and visions onto materials meant to endure. And yet, even with modern technology, we can reconstruct only part of the story. Speculative theories have arisen from these fragments. Some scholars suggest that certain scrolls hint at esoteric knowledge or mystical traditions that were deliberately hidden from wider society. Others speculate that the Essenes, or related sects, possessed unique interpretations of creation, prophecy, or cosmology that might have influenced early religious thought more profoundly than the historical record indicates. Could some of the texts reveal knowledge lost even to contemporary religious traditions? The geographical context also adds to the enigma. The Dead Sea lies at the lowest point on Earth's surface, a landscape of extremes, searing heat, mineral-rich waters, and a rugged, almost lunar terrain. The cliffs above, riddled with caves, create an ideal setting for concealment. Were the scrolls hidden in desperation, or was seclusion a deliberate, long-term strategy to protect sacred knowledge? Could other scrolls still lie undisturbed in undiscovered caves, waiting for a chance encounter like the one in 1947? The scrolls invite reflection not only on what was preserved, but on what may have been lost. They confront us with the fragility of human knowledge and the randomness of survival. Every fragment is precious, but incomplete. Every text raises new questions, even as it answers old ones. They challenge assumptions about linear history, about the transmission of sacred texts, and about the ways in which human communities record, safeguard, and interpret their own beliefs. To hold a scroll fragment today is to feel a direct connection across time. The faint traces of ink, the careful lines of script, the cracks and folds in the parchment, all speak of individuals who lived, thought, and worried about what would endure after their deaths. And yet, the broader story remains unfinished. The scrolls, in their silence, ask us to consider what knowledge, wisdom, or vision has already been lost, and what might still lie hidden beneath desert sands and rocky cliffs. The Dead Sea Scrolls also underscore a recurring theme in our exploration of archaeological mysteries: the tension between the known and the unknown. Like the Klerksdorp Spheres, the Plain of Jars, or the Rock-Hewn churches of Lalibela, they are tangible artifacts, yet their full significance eludes definitive explanation. They remind us that human history is rarely linear, rarely complete, and often far stranger than we imagine. As we contemplate these scrolls, their fragile surfaces illuminated in museum display cases, we are invited to ask deeper questions. How much of human knowledge has already disappeared, leaving only tantalizing hints in stone, clay, or parchment? What truths, practices, or beliefs did these ancient communities seek to preserve, and why were some allowed to survive while others vanished? And perhaps most provocatively, how many other texts, inscribed in secret and hidden in remote landscapes, might still await discovery, carrying with them insights that could challenge or expand our understanding of history itself? The Dead Sea Scrolls, in their quiet endurance, remind us that mysteries are not always loud or spectacular. They can lie in fragments, in whispered texts, in the careful preservation of human thought against the relentless passage of time. And in that whisper, in that fragment, the past speaks across millennia, asking us to listen, to ponder, and to wonder what is still hidden beneath the deserts of Palestine, beyond the reach of our current knowledge. From the fragile scrolls hidden in desert caves, chronicling human belief and law across millennia, we shift our gaze to the bustling, ancient port city of Alexandria, Egypt, a metropolis of knowledge, culture, and enigma, founded by Alexander the Great over 2,000 years ago. Beneath its modern streets, buried in layers of history and sand, lies an artifact that has captured global attention: the Black Sarcophagus, a relic that is as imposing in size as it is inscrutable in purpose. It offers a chilling glimpse into a past where the boundary between life and death, myth and reality, was both revered and feared. The sarcophagus, discovered in 2018 during excavations in the ancient city's necropolis, is colossal. Estimated at over 2.5 meters long, crafted from solid black granite, with intricate carvings covering its exterior. Unlike most funerary objects, it is extraordinarily heavy, requiring machinery and remarkable engineering to move even short distances. Its lid is adorned with reliefs that depict contorted, anguished faces, eyes wide and mouths open in silent screams, a strikingly visceral portrayal of torment, rather than the serene imagery commonly associated with Egyptian burials. When archaeologists first opened the sarcophagus, they found liquid inside. The initial reports described it as a dark, viscous substance, the contents partially decomposed but still unyielding. The liquid seemed almost unnatural, resisting simple categorization, and the sarcophagus itself emitted a faint odor reminiscent of decay. Scientific analysis revealed that the fluid contained traces of organic matter, though exactly what caused its unusual preservation remains unclear. The coffin had been sealed for centuries, creating a microenvironment unlike anything researchers had previously encountered. Mainstream explanations suggest that the sarcophagus may have belonged to a high-ranking individual, perhaps a priest, noble, or someone of extraordinary status, given the scale, material, and craftsmanship. Black granite, quarried from Aswan and transported hundreds of kilometers, was a luxury material, reserved for those with power and wealth. The anguished carvings might represent a form of ritualized protection, designed to ward off malevolent spirits or to depict the torments of the afterlife as described in Egyptian funerary texts. Yet despite these plausible interpretations, many aspects defy conventional understanding. The sheer size and weight raise questions about the methods employed to carve, transport, and position the sarcophagus in a pre-modern city. How did workers move this immense block through the streets of ancient Alexandria, a city bustling with trade but constrained by urban infrastructure? The engineering required suggests not only physical prowess but sophisticated planning and technical knowledge. Equally compelling is the psychological and artistic intent behind the lid's design. Faces twisted in apparent agony, mouths agape in silent screams. Such imagery is almost unprecedented in known Egyptian funerary art. Traditional iconography emphasizes calm, eternal repose or the protective presence of gods and symbols. What cultural or religious message does this striking departure convey? Were these representations meant to terrify potential desecrators, to illustrate the torments awaiting the unworthy in the afterlife, or to capture some aspect of an esoteric ritual now lost to history? Speculative theories have emerged alongside mainstream interpretations. Some suggest the sarcophagus could be connected to mythic or supernatural narratives, perhaps linked to forgotten cults or rituals associated with death and the beyond. Others argue that the fluid inside might have been a preservative, intentionally prepared to slow decomposition and create an effect that has been misinterpreted by modern scientists. Could it have been an early form of embalming or chemical experimentation, now lost to the records of history? And what of the screams carved into stone? Do they encode symbolism, warnings, or messages intended to endure beyond the tomb's occupant? The context of Alexandria itself adds layers of intrigue. A city renowned for its lighthouse, library, and cosmopolitan culture, Alexandria has always been a nexus of human knowledge, trade, and esoteric thought. It is not difficult to imagine that elite Egyptians, influenced by Hellenistic philosophies and local religious traditions, might have commissioned a sarcophagus that merged art, ritual, and technology in ways we do not yet fully understand. The Black Sarcophagus stands as a monument not only to death, but to the human desire to transcend mortality, to impress meaning and permanence onto the passage of time. Moreover, the discovery raises questions about the countless other graves and tombs that remain buried beneath Alexandria. The city has been continuously inhabited for over 2 millennia, with urban development, earthquakes, and rising waters concealing and preserving countless artifacts. If a sarcophagus of this size and uniqueness could survive unnoticed until 2018, what else lies hidden beneath the sands, streets, and buildings of this ancient metropolis? What other funerary practices, esoteric rituals, or technological experiments remain buried, waiting for the chance to resurface? The Black Sarcophagus also reminds us of the human fascination with death, the afterlife, and the unknown. It connects us, across centuries, to a culture that labored tirelessly to honor, preserve, and perhaps even control the journey beyond life. The anguished faces, the dense liquid, the impenetrable granite, they all speak of a consciousness aware of mortality, yet striving to shape it, to contain it, and to communicate across time. The sarcophagus is both a tomb and a message, offering clues while withholding definitive answers, challenging us to interpret what we cannot fully know. Standing before the sarcophagus, whether in photographs or in person, one is struck by the tension between its material permanence and the ephemeral nature of life it once contained. It is a vessel of questions. Who lay within? What rituals were performed in its creation? How was it engineered, transported, and sealed with such precision? And, perhaps most hauntingly, what was the intent behind those carved faces, screaming silently for thousands of years, waiting for a world that could scarcely imagine them? In the broader context of archaeological mysteries, the Black Sarcophagus resonates with patterns we have observed elsewhere. Objects that defy expectation, constructions that exceed presumed technological capabilities, and artifacts that challenge the boundaries of what we believe ancient humans could accomplish. From the Tollund Man and the Plain of Jars to Lalibela and the Anunnaki tablets, the past repeatedly confronts us with feats and phenomena that seem, at first, to belong to myth rather than history. The Black Sarcophagus is no exception. Its scale, symbolism, and enigma continue this long thread of human mystery. And so, as we contemplate this massive coffin sealed for centuries in the sands of Alexandria, we are left with enduring questions. What truths, beliefs, and techniques might it conceal? How much knowledge has been lost to time? And how many other secrets remain buried beneath the shifting sands and urban layers of this ancient city? Like the many artifacts we have explored, the Black Sarcophagus challenges the limits of understanding, reminding us that history is rarely fully knowable, and that some mysteries persist, not because they are unsolvable, but because they invite us to wonder, to investigate, and to imagine what lies beyond the visible, the tangible, and the recorded. From the black granite of Alexandria, heavy with the weight of time and silent screams, we journey northward to the ancient heart of Syria, to a city that once pulsed with royal power and ceremonial grandeur, Qatna. Nestled in the fertile plains near the Orontes River, Qatna was a thriving center of trade and culture during the 2nd millennium BCE, known for its palaces, monumental architecture, and far-reaching influence across the Levant. Beneath its palace ruins, archaeologists uncovered one of the most extraordinary and enigmatic tombs of the ancient Near East, the Qatna Royal Tomb. Discovered in the early 2000s during excavations led by German and Syrian teams, the tomb is a vast subterranean complex, a labyrinth of chambers carved with meticulous precision into the earth beneath the royal palace. Unlike typical burial sites of the region, the tomb is monumental in scale. Multiple rooms, high vaulted ceilings, and intricately decorated walls suggest a level of architectural ambition that is both awe-inspiring and puzzling. The tomb contained the remains of numerous individuals, presumably members of the royal family, accompanied by an astonishing array of grave goods, from jewelry and gold vessels to intricately crafted weapons and ceremonial items. The first impression upon entering the tomb is one of deliberate order and ceremonial gravity. The layout is symmetrical, with a central chamber leading to side rooms that may have served as burial spaces or ritual areas. Every corner, every niche appears designed to convey hierarchy and reverence, echoing the importance of the occupants. Yet, amid this apparent order, mysteries abound. Many of the objects found within the tomb seem far older than the construction itself, suggesting the reuse of artifacts or the transmission of materials across generations. How did these items come to be included in the tomb, and what stories, lost to time, do they carry? Among the most compelling discoveries were the skeletal remains themselves. Studies indicate that the tomb was used over multiple generations, with careful attention paid to burial rituals, yet some aspects defy easy interpretation. Certain skeletons were arranged in positions that appear deliberate, but whose significance remains unclear. Could these arrangements represent ritual hierarchies, spiritual beliefs, or symbolic gestures now lost to us? And why were some individuals interred with lavish treasures, while others, seemingly of equal status, were accompanied by comparatively modest goods? The craftsmanship of the tomb and its contents is remarkable. Gold and silver objects are adorned with intricate motifs, animals, geometric patterns, and symbolic imagery whose meanings may never be fully deciphered. Ceramics bear inscriptions and designs that suggest connections to distant cultures, hinting at trade networks or diplomatic exchanges that linked Qatna to regions as far as Mesopotamia and Anatolia. The presence of foreign goods raises questions about the political and cultural influences on Qatna's elite. Were these items diplomatic gifts, spoils of conquest, or objects imbued with ritual significance? Mainstream explanations situate the tomb firmly within the traditions of Middle Bronze Age Levantine burial practices. Archaeologists emphasize that Qatna's rulers sought to demonstrate wealth, power, and divine favor through elaborate tomb construction, and that the presence of imported artifacts reflects established trade and diplomatic relationships. Yet these interpretations, while informative, do not fully account for certain peculiarities of the site. For instance, some objects exhibit metallurgical properties that challenge our understanding of Bronze Age technology, including unusual alloys and craftsmanship techniques. How were these created, and what knowledge might have been required to produce them? Speculative theories have emerged to explain aspects of the tomb that remain ambiguous. Some researchers suggest that Qatna's royal elite may have incorporated esoteric or religious symbolism into the tomb's design, encoding cosmological knowledge or ritual practices in the spatial arrangement of chambers and objects. Could the tomb itself be a map of celestial or spiritual realms, intended to guide the deceased through the afterlife? Others have proposed that certain artifacts and skeletal placements indicate a society with advanced knowledge of astronomy, ritualized mathematics, or symbolic architecture, an understanding partially lost to contemporary scholarship. the tomb's discovery also raises questions about the society that built it. Qatna was a political and cultural hub, yet relatively little is known about its internal hierarchy, religious practices, or administrative systems. The royal tomb offers tantalizing clues, but also frustrating silences. Why were some tombs in the region modest, while Qatna's royal burial complex is monumental? What motivated such extraordinary expenditure of labor and resources? Were these tombs designed purely for the afterlife? Or did they also serve a socio-political purpose, reinforcing the power and prestige of the ruling dynasty among the living? Equally compelling is the tomb's enduring state of preservation. Unlike many other ancient burial sites in the region, the Qatna royal tomb was largely protected from looting for millennia, preserving delicate artifacts, skeletal remains, and architectural details. This rare survival allows modern researchers to study Bronze Age funerary practices in unprecedented depth. Yet, even with such preservation, gaps remain. Inscriptions are fragmentary, decorative motifs are partially eroded, and the full narrative of the tomb's use remains tantalizingly out of reach. The location of Qatna itself adds to the intrigue. Positioned along key trade routes between Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and the Levant, the city was a crossroads of culture, religion, and power. Might the tomb reflect not only local practices, but also knowledge or influences imported from distant civilizations? Could the layout, the choice of grave goods, or the funerary rites incorporate ideas borrowed from far-flung cultures, creating a syncretic expression of elite identity now largely lost to history? As we reflect on the Qatna royal tomb, it becomes clear that this is more than a burial site. It is a statement, a monument, and a mystery. The craftsmanship, the scale, the artifacts, and the skeletal arrangements all speak of a civilization capable of remarkable feats, yet they withhold definitive answers. How much knowledge, ritual practice, and symbolic meaning has been lost? What stories remain hidden beneath the soil, waiting to be unearthed by future excavations? In the broader tapestry of archaeological enigmas, the Qatna royal tomb resonates with themes seen across the ancient world: ambition, ritual, technological prowess, and the enduring human desire to leave a mark beyond death. Like the Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria, the Anunnaki tablets of Mesopotamia, or the Rock-Hewn churches of Lalibela, it embodies both achievement and mystery, challenging us to reconcile what we know with what remains beyond our understanding. The tomb reminds us that the past is not a static record, but a conversation across centuries, a dialogue between those who labored, worshipped, and governed, and those of us who seek to uncover their stories. Its silence is profound, yet it compels inquiry, reflection, and wonder. What secrets lie still entombed within its chambers? How much of Qatna's history is written only in shadows and fragments? And what other mysteries, like this royal resting place, remain hidden beneath the layers of earth, waiting for the patient hands of discovery to reveal them? In this way, the Qatna royal tomb stands as both monument and question, a reminder that in every stone, every artifact, and every burial, the past continues to whisper its mysteries, if only we are willing to listen. From the subterranean chambers of Qatna, where royal tombs whisper of wealth, ritual, and deliberate preservation, we now travel to a mystery that has captivated historians and adventurers alike for over 2 millennia: the tomb of Alexander the Great. Unlike Qatna's preserved burial complex, Alexander's final resting place is shrouded in legend, rumor, and relentless speculation, a vanished monument to one of history's most formidable conquerors, whose ambitions reshaped the known world. Alexander, the Macedonian king who forged an empire stretching from Greece to the Indus River, died in Babylon in 323 BCE at the age of 32. Historical accounts describe a city steeped in mourning, where grief and awe mingled as the ruler's body was prepared for burial. According to some sources, his body was initially embalmed in honey to prevent decay, a common practice in the ancient world, yet one that evokes images of meticulous care and reverence for the deceased. From the moment of his death, the question of his final resting place became both a practical concern and a source of intrigue, setting the stage for centuries of speculation. Ancient texts suggest that Alexander's body was initially intended for burial in Macedonia, his homeland. Yet political machinations intervened. Ptolemy I, one of Alexander's generals and future ruler of Egypt, allegedly diverted the funeral procession to Alexandria, the city Alexander himself had founded. There, in the newly established metropolis on the Nile, a monumental tomb, referred to in historical sources as the Soma or Sema, was said to house his remains. Reports describe it as lavish, adorned with gold, precious stones, and statues, a fitting tribute to a man who had conquered much of the known world. Despite these detailed accounts, the tomb's precise location remains unknown. Scholars and archaeologists have scoured Alexandria for centuries, guided by fragments of historical texts, maps, and local traditions. Some suggest it lay near the Serapeum, the great temple dedicated to the Greco-Egyptian god Serapis, while others propose it was located closer to the royal quarter of ancient Alexandria, now buried beneath modern streets, buildings, and the shifting sands of the Nile Delta. Every excavation, however, has yielded tantalizing hints, but no definitive discovery. Descriptions from antiquity speak of public veneration of Alexander's tomb. Roman writers such as Strabo and Pausanias recount that Julius Caesar and Augustus visited the site, paying homage to the fallen king. Later, during the early Byzantine era, the tomb reportedly remained a place of pilgrimage, its splendor undiminished despite centuries of political change. Yet, with the rise of successive empires, earthquakes, and urban expansion, all traces of the tomb seem to have vanished, leaving only speculation and fragments of ancient text to guide us. The mystery deepens when considering conflicting historical accounts. Some sources suggest the tomb was desecrated, its treasures looted, or its body removed. Others propose that it sank beneath the waters of the Nile over centuries or was buried beneath layers of urban development, concealed and protected unintentionally by time itself. Could the tomb still exist, preserved under layers of sediment? Or has it been lost entirely to natural forces and human intervention? Speculative theories have flourished precisely because of these gaps in the historical record. Some researchers posit that Alexander's tomb was deliberately hidden, either to protect the remains of a man seen as divine or to prevent them from becoming a focus of political contestation. Others suggest that his body, if relocated, may have been transported along secret routes or reburied in a location known only to a select few. Could it lie undiscovered in a remote Egyptian desert, a Greek sanctuary, or beneath a modern city block, waiting for archaeologists to unearth it? The tomb, real or imagined, also raises questions about technological and architectural achievement. Ancient descriptions portray a monument of immense grandeur, possibly rivaling the pyramids in complexity and scale. Could a structure of such ambition have been built in the early Hellenistic period, blending Greek and Egyptian styles, engineering ingenuity, and artistic mastery? And if so, what might remain of it today, buried beneath centuries of urban expansion and the shifting course of the Nile? Alexander himself adds another layer of fascination to the mystery. He was more than a conqueror. He was deified by many of his contemporaries, seen as a son of gods, a master of both strategy and culture. His body was not merely a mortal vessel. It was an emblem of power, ambition, and divine favor. The treatment of his remains, the construction of his tomb, and the rituals associated with it were therefore not only practical, but symbolic, reflecting a society grappling with the extraordinary life and death of a figure who seemed larger than life itself. In a broader context, the story of Alexander's tomb resonates with themes we have encountered across other archaeological mysteries. Like the Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria, it evokes the human desire to confront mortality through monumental construction. Like the Qatna royal tomb, it reflects the interplay of wealth, status, and ritual practice in burial. And like the Anunnaki tablets, the Tollund Man, or the Dead Sea Scrolls, it challenges the limits of our knowledge, leaving gaps that invite curiosity, investigation, and reflection. Even without its physical remains, the tomb exerts a powerful influence on our imagination. Artists, historians, and archaeologists have speculated endlessly, creating maps, theories, and reconstructions that attempt to capture its lost grandeur. And yet, despite centuries of scholarship, the ultimate truth remains elusive. Was it looted, buried, destroyed, or merely hidden? And in the absence of certainty, what does the story of Alexander's tomb tell us about the fragility of memory, the impermanence of even the most monumental human endeavors, and the enduring fascination with those who have shaped the world in extraordinary ways? Walking through the streets of modern Alexandria, it is easy to imagine the layers of history beneath our feet. The tomb, if it exists, lies silent, a remnant of a past that is at once tangible and unreachable. The city itself, with its bustling markets, streets, and port, has grown over the centuries atop the relics of civilizations long gone, preserving and concealing them in equal measure. In this way, the mystery of Alexander's tomb is inseparable from the city itself, a living palimpsest of history, memory, and the unknown. Ultimately, the search for Alexander's final resting place is a journey into both history and imagination. It is a quest that intertwines archaeology, textual scholarship, and human curiosity. Every lead, every fragment of text, every excavation raises new questions even as it promises answers. And in that tension, between what we know and what remains hidden, the tomb of Alexander the Great continues to captivate the mind, reminding us that some mysteries endure not because they are unsolvable, but because they compel us to wonder, to explore, and to seek truths that lie just beyond our grasp. The tomb of Alexander the Great, whether buried beneath layers of sand and stone or forever lost to the tides of history, remains a symbol of human ambition, mortality, and the enduring allure of the unknown. Like the many artifacts and sites we have explored, it is a reminder that history is not merely a record of events, but a landscape of mysteries, inviting us to follow its traces, to question, and to imagine what might still be hidden beneath the surface of our world. From the bustling streets of modern Alexandria, atop centuries of urban layers concealing the tomb of one of history's greatest conquerors, we shift our attention to a far quieter corner of the world, in the heart of Texas, where a discovery challenges conventional timelines and invites us to reconsider the boundaries of human history. This is the story of the London hammer, a seemingly ordinary tool that hides extraordinary questions within its simple form. In the 1930s, while exploring the rocky banks of the Red Creek near London, Texas, a local couple made a discovery that would later captivate both scientists and enthusiasts alike. Embedded within a concretion of rock, partially encased and obscured by hardened minerals, was a hammer. At first glance, it appeared unremarkable, a wooden handle and a metal head, the familiar design of a tool that could have been used in any construction site. Yet its context was anything but ordinary. The surrounding rock was identified as Cretaceous limestone, a layer traditionally dated at roughly 100 million years old. The initial analysis by geologists confirmed the hammer's unusual situation. The concretion had formed tightly around the hammer, embedding it in stone that should predate the appearance of humans by tens of millions of years. The implications were staggering. How could a man-made object, unmistakably crafted and shaped by human hands, be found in geological strata formed long before humans existed? The hammer, in its silence, seemed to defy the fundamental principles of archaeology and geology. Examining the object itself, the design is straightforward, yet undeniably functional. The metal head is composed primarily of iron with traces of other elements, and the handle, still partially preserved, fits seamlessly into the head, suggesting an understanding of metallurgy and tool-making that is consistent with known human craftsmanship. Experts in historical tools point out that its form resembles early 19th century hammers, a style widely used in Europe and America. Yet the rock formation that encased it complicates this straightforward identification. How could a tool from such a relatively recent era find itself embedded in stone, traditionally dated to prehistoric periods? Mainstream explanations lean toward natural phenomena and geological processes. One theory suggests that the hammer was simply encased in a concretion, a formation that can occur relatively rapidly when minerals precipitate around an object in water-rich sediment. Over decades, calcium carbonate and other minerals can solidify around organic and metallic materials, creating a rock-like shell that appears ancient. This interpretation frames the hammer as a modern artifact that became naturally encrusted, producing the illusion of a temporal anomaly. Yet, the mystery persists because of the hammer's appearance and preservation. The concretion is exceptionally hard, weathered, and tightly fused, indicating a long period of mineralization. The iron head shows rusting, but the surrounding rock is solid and dense, with no obvious fractures that would suggest recent encasement. The wooden handle, remarkably, retains its shape and some organic material despite its age. This combination of factors has led some researchers to propose more speculative scenarios, including the possibility of unknown preservation methods, or even that the artifact may have become embedded through processes not fully understood by contemporary science. The London hammer also evokes questions about human history itself. If, hypothetically, a man-made tool were found in rock layers millions of years old, what would it imply about our understanding of civilization and technological development? Could there have been human activity far earlier than current archaeological consensus allows? While such speculation remains controversial, it is difficult to dismiss the physical evidence entirely. The hammer sits quietly in a museum display, its simple form belying the enormity of the questions it raises. What is equally intriguing is the object's journey from discovery to examination. Once extracted from the rock, the hammer drew attention from collectors, metallurgists, and researchers, each attempting to reconcile its apparent age with established historical timelines. Testing revealed the iron composition, its crystalline structure, and the way it was forged, all pointing to familiar human techniques. The concretion, however, remains a stubborn puzzle. How long did it take for such a formation to occur naturally, and under what environmental conditions? Can modern geology fully explain its existence, or are there aspects of mineralization and sedimentary processes that we have yet to comprehend? Speculative theories abound. Some enthusiasts have suggested that the hammer could be evidence of lost civilizations, or advanced humans predating what we currently know. Others hypothesize that it could represent a time displacement anomaly, or even a misinterpreted geological phenomenon that challenges the limits of stratigraphy. While mainstream science remains cautious, emphasizing natural processes and the known formation of concretions, the London hammer continues to occupy a unique place at the intersection of archaeology, geology, and human imagination. The artifact also raises broader questions about the assumptions we bring to history and science. How many other tools, artifacts, or objects lie hidden in rock formations, overlooked because they appear incongruous with prevailing theories? What criteria should we use to reconcile anomalies with established knowledge, and how can we remain open to evidence that challenges our chronological frameworks without succumbing to unwarranted speculation? In examining the London Hammer, one is reminded that mysteries often lie in the simplest objects. Unlike monumental tombs or ancient texts, it is a small, practical item, a tool whose purpose was functional, mundane, and entirely human. Yet within its concretion, it carries a narrative that transcends utility, prompting reflection on time, preservation, and the history of human innovation. Could it be a reminder that history is not linear, that the past may hold surprises still buried beneath layers of stone and sediment? The hammer's preservation, partially intact after decades, or perhaps centuries, raises further curiosity about environmental conditions and the resilience of human craftsmanship. How did the combination of iron, wood, and mineralization create an artifact that continues to baffle observers? Could similar objects exist elsewhere, quietly challenging the boundaries of what we consider possible in the timeline of human history? Ultimately, the London Hammer is both familiar and enigmatic, a paradoxical object bridging the ordinary and the extraordinary. It is a silent witness to forces of nature, the passage of time, and human ingenuity. It invites us to question our assumptions, to examine the intersection of science and history, and to consider the hidden possibilities that may yet emerge from the earth beneath our feet. As we contemplate this small, enigmatic tool embedded in stone, we are reminded that not all mysteries require vast tombs, monumental architecture, or legendary rulers to captivate us. Sometimes a single, unassuming object can spark profound questions about who we are, what we know, and how much remains hidden in the sediment of time. The London Hammer, in its quiet persistence, reminds us that the past is never fully revealed, and that some enigmas endure because they provoke us to imagine, to investigate, and to wonder what may yet lie undiscovered. From the quiet, enigmatic hammer embedded in stone along the banks of Red Creek, we move southward to the humid lowlands of Veracruz, Mexico, where another artifact challenges our understanding of human history. Unlike monumental tombs or tools of obvious function, the Cascajal block is small, unassuming, and at first glance, entirely ordinary. Yet within its smooth, serpentine surface lies a mystery that could redefine the very origins of writing in the ancient Americas. Discovered in 1999 near the village of Cascajal, the block measures roughly 36 centimeters in length and 21 centimeters in height, carved from a dark green, dense stone. Across its surface are etched 62 distinct symbols, arranged in horizontal rows. Some resemble abstract geometric shapes. Others hint at natural forms, plants, animals, and shapes that defy immediate classification. The lines and curves are deliberate, precise, as though each mark carried meaning, intended to convey information beyond mere decoration. From the moment archaeologists first held it in their hands, they sensed that this small artifact was more than a stone. It was a message from a people long vanished, a record whose language remains largely indecipherable. The context of the discovery adds to the intrigue. The block was unearthed among the debris of an Olmec-era settlement, a civilization that flourished in Mesoamerica between roughly 1200 and 400 BCE. The Olmecs are celebrated for their colossal stone heads, intricate jade carvings, and ceremonial centers. Yet, the Cascajal block presents a tantalizingly different dimension of their culture, the possibility of written communication. Prior to this find, no definitive evidence existed of Olmec script, and few scholars had imagined that such a complex symbolic system might have emerged so early in the Americas. Scientific examination of the block reveals craftsmanship both deliberate and sophisticated. The serpentine was carefully selected and smoothed, The symbols were carved with precision, their edges sharp, indicating skilled tools and careful handwork. Some signs repeat in regular patterns, suggesting a system rather than random marks. Could these symbols represent words, ideas, or sounds? Might the block be an early form of proto-writing, a record of trade, ritual, or governance? Mainstream interpretations cautiously place the block within the Olmec cultural timeline, framing it as evidence of an early attempt at communication. But the questions linger. What exactly does it say, and how widely was such a system used? What makes the Cascajal block so compelling and controversial is its singularity. No other examples of similar inscriptions have been discovered in contemporaneous Olmec sites. Was this a unique experiment, a local innovation, or the remnant of a wider, now lost system of writing? Scholars debate whether the block was a practical record, a ceremonial object, or even a teaching tool. The repetition of certain symbols hints at intentional coding, but without a Rosetta Stone of Olmec symbols, any interpretation remains speculative. Some researchers have explored connections between the symbols and later Mesoamerican scripts, such as the Zapotec or Maya writing systems. Could the block represent a precursor, an early stage in the evolution of glyphic writing that would later flourish across the region? If so, the implications are profound. The Olmecs, often considered primarily an artistic and ceremonial culture, may have possessed cognitive and linguistic sophistication previously unrecognized. It raises fundamental questions about how knowledge, culture, and technology were transmitted across generations, and what may have been lost to time. Alternative hypotheses, more speculative, suggest that the block could represent knowledge so advanced that it was encoded deliberately to be understood only by a select few. Some propose that the Olmecs may have developed a proto-writing system independently, a glimpse into a form of communication that remains largely hidden from modern eyes. Others note the possibility that the symbols are purely symbolic or ritualistic, not intended to convey information in the same way as alphabetic or logographic scripts. But even then, the precision and repetition of the carvings suggest intention and deliberate patterning, a language of symbols whose meaning has been obscured by time. The physical preservation of the block itself is remarkable. Serpentine is a resilient stone, and the carvings have endured centuries of weathering and burial. Yet its survival also invites reflection. What else might lie buried nearby? Could there be additional blocks, fragments of Olmec writing, or objects that clarify the system? Every layer of soil, every excavation, holds the potential to deepen or radically shift our understanding. As we consider the Cascajal block, it becomes clear that this artifact is both ordinary and extraordinary. On the one hand, it is a small stone, unadorned with gold, jewels, or monumental scale. On the other hand, it is a window into a human mind grappling with abstraction, symbols, and the desire to preserve meaning across time. The block asks questions that remain unanswered. Who created it, and for what purpose? How widely was this system used? And if this was the first writing in the Americas, what does it tell us about the cognitive and cultural sophistication of the Olmecs? Like the London Hammer, which forces us to reconsider the interplay of time, human activity, and geological processes, the Cascajal block forces us to reconsider the timeline of knowledge itself. It challenges assumptions about when writing emerged, how civilizations encoded meaning, and what evidence survives for modern discovery. Unlike monumental structures or tombs, this small artifact does not shout its significance. It quietly insists that we look closer, think deeper, and question what we believe we know about the origins of human expression. Ultimately, the Cascajal block stands as both artifact and enigma, a silent testament to a people whose intellectual achievements have largely vanished, leaving behind only tantalizing hints. Its symbols, etched into hard stone centuries ago, persist as a dialogue across time, inviting scholars and observers alike to interpret, speculate, and imagine. What knowledge has been lost? How many other signs, tablets, or inscriptions lie buried, waiting to be revealed? And most compellingly, what does the existence of this single block tell us about the capabilities of a civilization that flourished long before its secrets could be fully recorded or understood? In contemplating the Cascajal block, we are reminded that the mysteries of human history are often concealed in the smallest and most unexpected places. One stone can open a doorway to understanding, while simultaneously revealing the limits of our knowledge. Its 62 carved symbols, silent yet deliberate, continue to challenge, provoke, and inspire, calling us to explore not only the artifact itself, but the broader questions of human ingenuity, communication, and the enduring mysteries that remain buried in the past. From the verdant valleys of Veracruz, where the Cascajal block hints at a civilization capable of early writing and symbolic thought, our journey now takes us high into the rugged Andean mountains of Peru, to a site whose very stones seem to hum with a quiet, mysterious energy, the Temple of the Moon, or Templo de la Luna. Nestled on the slopes above the modern city of Trujillo, overlooking the fertile Moche River Valley, this sprawling ceremonial complex commands both awe and curiosity. Unlike the modest block of serpentine in Mexico, the Temple of the Moon is monumental in scale, a labyrinth of platforms, terraces, and chambers carved from adobe and stone, its surfaces bearing traces of intricate murals and sculpted reliefs that have survived centuries of exposure to wind, rain, and sun. Approaching the site, one is immediately struck by the deliberate geometry of its construction. Massive walls rise in angular terraces, interspersed with staircases and narrow passageways that suggest careful planning and an understanding of both engineering and aesthetics. The central platform, often interpreted as an altar or ceremonial stage, dominates the complex, oriented along axes that may correspond to astronomical alignments. From this vantage, the valley below stretches outward, revealing patterns of ancient irrigation canals, agricultural terraces, and other Moche constructions, all hinting at a society deeply attuned to both the natural world and its spiritual dimensions. The Moche civilization, flourishing between roughly 100 and 800 CE, is renowned for its artistic sophistication and complex social hierarchy. Pottery, metallurgy, and textile work attest to their technical skill, while murals and reliefs depict scenes of ritual, sacrifice, and daily life. The Temple of the Moon, however, presents an enigmatic chapter in this story. Its sheer scale and enigmatic features raise questions about purpose and practice. Was it primarily a ceremonial center for elite rulers? A place of pilgrimage for common people? Or might it have served functions now obscured by time? Astronomical observation, initiation rites, or ritualized communication with deities that we no longer fully understand? Archaeological investigations have revealed evidence of human sacrifice and ritual offerings, including remains of llamas, guinea pigs, and other animals, as well as traces of finely crafted ceramics and ornaments. The presence of these offerings suggests deliberate ceremonial activity, yet the scale and layout of the Temple of the Moon hint at meanings beyond what we can readily interpret. Certain chambers are constructed with unusual care, their walls exhibiting intricate reliefs and pigments, sometimes hidden deep within the complex, accessible only through narrow corridors. Why were these areas concealed, and for whom were they intended? Equally compelling is the question of astronomical knowledge. Some researchers propose that the Temple of the Moon, like other Moche sites, was aligned with celestial events, the cycles of the moon, the sun, and perhaps even Venus. Could the terraces, stairways, and platforms have functioned as observational tools, allowing priests to mark time, schedule ceremonies, or interpret omens? If so, the site represents not merely artistic or ritualistic achievement, but an advanced understanding of natural rhythms encoded into architecture and landscape. Yet, much of this remains speculative, as evidence is fragmentary and interpretations vary among scholars. The murals and reliefs of the temple add another layer of mystery. While some depict recognizable figures, animals, or ritual scenes, many symbols and patterns remain enigmatic. Certain motifs, repeated across walls and niches, may encode religious or cosmological ideas that we cannot yet decipher. Were these symbols intended for initiates, communicating knowledge accessible only to a select few? Or were they public expressions of cosmology, meant to reinforce societal hierarchy and religious authority? The ambiguity invites reflection on the cognitive and cultural sophistication of the Moche and reminds us how much of ancient knowledge can remain hidden in plain sight. Over the centuries, natural forces and human activity have altered the Temple of the Moon. Earthquakes, erosion, and looting have damaged its walls, removed pigments, and displaced artifacts. Yet, despite this, enough remains to convey a sense of the site's original grandeur and purpose. The terraces, ceremonial platforms, and carved niches still speak to an intentionality that transcends time, suggesting a civilization deeply concerned with ritual, cosmology, and the structuring of sacred space. Speculative theories have emerged to explain certain unusual features of the site. Some researchers propose that the Temple of the Moon may have been connected to a broader network of ceremonial centers, forming a complex system of spiritual and political authority across the Moche heartland. Others suggest that its construction reflects techniques or knowledge lost to time, including advanced engineering methods for adobe stabilization, drainage, and monumental planning. Could there also have been esoteric knowledge embedded in its walls, intentionally preserved by priests and leaders, a hidden dialogue between the sacred and the profane? The Temple of the Moon, in its scale, complexity, and deliberate design, resonates with themes we have encountered in other archaeological mysteries. Like the Cascajal block, it reflects a society capable of advanced cognitive and symbolic thought. Like the London hammer, it challenges us to reconsider assumptions about human ingenuity, persistence, and the passage of time. And like other enigmatic sites, it leaves gaps in the record, spaces for imagination and inquiry. What was the full extent of Moche knowledge, belief, and ritual practice? How did this knowledge influence later civilizations, and what has been irrevocably lost? Walking through the terraces and chambers today, one feels a profound sense of connection to those who once inhabited the site. Each worn step, each carved relief, each faded pigment offers a silent testimony of human endeavor, belief, and creativity. The Temple of the Moon is more than a structure. It is a dialogue across centuries, an invitation to consider the interplay of architecture, ritual, and the natural world. It reminds us that archaeological mysteries are not only puzzles to be solved, they are windows into human experience, thought, and aspiration. Ultimately, the Temple of the Moon remains a testament to both achievement and enigma. Its walls hold stories that may never be fully interpreted, symbols that may defy translation, and a spatial organization that challenges our understanding of pre-Columbian societies. Yet its enduring presence invites continued exploration, reflection, and wonder. Could there be chambers still undiscovered? Symbols yet unrecognized? Insights into Moche cosmology and ritual practice that remain buried beneath layers of earth and time? The answers may lie hidden, waiting for those patient enough to investigate and open enough to embrace the uncertainty that makes archaeology and human history so endlessly compelling. From the high terraces and shadowed chambers of Peru's Temple of the Moon, where the Moche civilization engraved its rituals and beliefs into stone and earth, we turn our attention eastward, across continents and millennia, to the ancient heartlands of China. Here, beneath the arid plains of Henan Province and the shifting sands surrounding Anyang, lie the remnants of a civilization that not only mastered bronze metallurgy and monumental architecture, but also pioneered one of humanity's earliest forms of written communication, the oracle bones. Unlike the grand ceremonial platforms of the Andes, the oracle bones are intimate in scale. Small fragments of ox scapulae or turtle plastrons, meticulously inscribed, each one a tangible whisper from a world more than 3,000 years old. The oracle bones, first recognized by scholars in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, bear inscriptions that are both fascinating and confounding. Upon these bones, diviners of the late Shang dynasty, roughly 1250 to 1046 BCE, etched questions addressed to ancestors and deities. These questions spanned the practical and the profound. Inquiries about harvests, military campaigns, births, illnesses, and omens. The inscriptions were not merely records. They were tools of divination. Once inscribed, the bones were heated until they cracked, and the diviners interpreted the fissures as answers from the spiritual realm. What is striking, even to modern observers, is the precision of the inscriptions and the sophistication of the questions posed. Here is a civilization capable of recording the abstract, of encoding human concerns into symbols that survive the ravages of millennia. The discovery of these artifacts was serendipitous. Farmers and villagers, digging for fertilizer or clay in Anyang, unearthed fragments that were at first misunderstood, sometimes dismissed as curiosities or talismans. It was only when scholars began to notice repeated symbols and patterns that the significance of these bones became apparent. Careful excavation and analysis revealed thousands of fragments, collectively forming an archive that provides unparalleled insight into Shang society. Yet even with modern scholarship, many aspects remain opaque. The symbols, precursors to modern Chinese characters, are often cryptic, their meanings lost or partially understood. Scholars painstakingly reconstruct the inscriptions, attempting to decode the questions, the names of diviners, and the outcomes of their queries. But much remains tantalizingly elusive. The physical characteristics of the oracle bones themselves invite contemplation. The surfaces bear the marks of careful preparation, scraping, polishing, and etching. Some show traces of repeated handling, suggesting ritualistic or ceremonial significance. The cracks produced during divination are sometimes irregular, unpredictable, yet the diviners appear to have developed a methodology for interpreting them, an early system of probabilistic reasoning applied in a spiritual context. What knowledge did they possess about the interaction of fire, bone, and chance? How did this understanding shape the decisions of kings, warriors, and farmers alike? Mainstream interpretations frame the oracle bones as instruments of governance and ritual, a tangible interface between the human and spiritual realms. Yet their existence also raises broader questions about the origins and evolution of writing. Could this form of divination-driven script suggest a cognitive and societal sophistication that modern timelines underestimate? Were the Shang using symbolic communication in ways that parallel or even anticipate later bureaucratic and literary systems? Some scholars posit that the oracle bones represent not only a recording of events, but also an early experiment in abstraction, in encoding human experience into a visual, interpretable form. Speculative lines of thought extend even further. Certain inscriptions appear repetitive or formulaic, leading some to suggest that the bones may encode knowledge beyond immediate ritual, perhaps serving as mnemonic devices, educational tools, or even repositories of esoteric wisdom. Others have noted that some symbols do not correspond neatly with known Chinese characters, hinting at lost dialects or idiosyncratic forms of expression. Could these fragments represent a deeper, partially obscured worldview, one in which humans and spirits engaged in dialogue not just for guidance, but for understanding the fundamental rhythms of life and nature. The oracle bones also invite reflection on the intersection of materiality and meaning. Each bone is both artifact and instrument, a tool shaped by human hands, imbued with ritual purpose, and simultaneously a message frozen in time. The interplay between physical manipulation, scraping, carving, heating, and abstract interpretation exemplifies a cognitive sophistication that resonates across cultures and epochs. Here is a culture that considered the unseen forces of the universe worthy of inquiry, and developed methods to systematize and record that inquiry in a form that could survive the centuries. Yet, as with many archaeological mysteries, the oracle bones offer more questions than answers. How did the practice of divination influence Shang governance, economics, or social structure? What knowledge, encoded in symbols and ritual, has been irrevocably lost? And how might these fragments illuminate broader patterns of early human cognition and societal complexity? Each bone, inscribed with careful strokes, is both a solution and a puzzle, a record of thought that transcends its material form while remaining inseparable from it. Moreover, the oracle bones exemplify the tension between the known and the unknown in archaeology. On the one hand, their discovery and study have transformed our understanding of early Chinese civilization, confirming the sophistication of the Shang dynasty and establishing a clear lineage for the development of Chinese writing. On the other hand, gaps remain. Entire sequences of inscriptions are missing, fragments are irretrievably damaged, and many symbols resist interpretation. In this way, the oracle bones are a microcosm of the broader human endeavor to understand the past, simultaneously illuminating and mysterious, revealing knowledge while hinting at what is forever beyond our grasp. Walking among these fragments today, whether in museum displays or excavation sites, one senses the enduring presence of those ancient diviners. Their hands carved questions into bone, their eyes studied the fractures produced by fire, their minds interpreted signs from realms unseen. And though the details of their world are partially obscured by time, the resonance of their inquiry remains palpable. The oracle bones stand as a testament to human curiosity, to the desire to seek understanding from both the material and spiritual worlds, and to the enduring power of symbols as vessels of thought. Ultimately, the oracle bones challenge us to consider the boundaries of knowledge and the ways in which civilizations grapple with the unknown. They remind us that writing itself is not merely a practical tool, but a profound cognitive achievement, capable of encoding abstract thought, social organization, and spiritual belief. And like the Temple of the Moon in Peru or the Cascajal block in Mexico, these fragments from ancient China invite reflection. How much knowledge has been lost? What cultural, spiritual, or technological insights remain buried? And how might we, standing millennia later, interpret these traces of human curiosity, ingenuity, and the perpetual quest to communicate with forces beyond our immediate understanding? In contemplating the oracle bones, we are drawn into a dialogue across time, one that spans continents, cultures, and millennia. They are not only archaeological artifacts, they are questions carved in bone, enigmas that compel us to look deeper, think carefully, and remain open to the mysteries that continue to echo from humanity's distant past. From the divinatory inscriptions etched into the oracle bones of ancient China, where human curiosity met the uncertainty of fate, our journey now shifts westward, across continents and millennia, to the gentle hills and fertile plains of southeastern Europe. Here, along the banks of the Danube River in what is today Serbia, lay one of the earliest complex settlements of Neolithic Europe, the Vinca culture. Unlike the monumental temples of Peru or the inscribed bones of the Shang dynasty, the Vinca sites are quieter, their mysteries embedded in humble clay and earth. yet they are no less profound in the questions they provoke about the dawn of human civilization. The Vinca culture, flourishing between approximately 5,700 and 4,500 BCE, left behind sprawling settlements, some covering tens of hectares, composed of carefully arranged houses, communal spaces, and streets. Excavations at sites such as Vinca Belo Bordeaux have revealed densely packed dwellings, often built with wattle and daub, roofed with thatch, and arranged in orderly patterns that suggest careful urban planning. Walking among the ruins today, or imagining the scene in its Neolithic prime, one can sense a society that valued structure, stability, and perhaps ritual. Yet, it is the smaller artifacts, the delicate clay figurines, and inscribed pottery that invite the deepest mysteries. Among these finds are the so-called Vinca symbols, small engraved marks appearing on pottery, figurines, and tablets. These symbols, geometric and abstract, often repeated in seemingly deliberate sequences, have been interpreted by some scholars as evidence of a proto-writing system, a form of symbolic communication that predates the earliest known scripts of Mesopotamia. Could these markings represent names, quantities, or religious concepts? Or were they decorative motifs, ritual tokens, or mnemonic devices? The ambiguity fuels both fascination and debate. While mainstream archaeology often treats the symbols as early symbolic or counting marks, their sophistication and consistency across different sites hint at a more profound cognitive achievement, a visual language whose full meaning has been lost to time. The figurines themselves add layers of intrigue. Carved from clay, often stylized and abstract, these representations of human and animal forms are not mere toys or ornaments. Many appear to serve ritual or symbolic purposes, emphasizing fertility, authority, or spiritual belief. Some display intricate patterns, echoing the motifs found on Vinca pottery, while others are deliberately fractured or buried in special contexts. Were these figurines objects of veneration, pedagogical tools, or coded messages? And if the Vinca symbols on pottery are connected to these figurines, might they represent a system of knowledge, belief, or social communication that is now indecipherable? The scale and organization of Vinca settlements further deepens the mystery. These communities were not isolated hamlets. They were connected through trade networks that extended hundreds of kilometers, exchanging obsidian, shells, and other materials. Evidence of metallurgy, copper tools, and ornaments emerges in the later Vinca phases, suggesting a society capable of technological innovation well ahead of its time. How did knowledge of metallurgy, construction, and symbolic systems spread across these communities? Could the symbols etched into clay reflect a shared understanding, a proto-administrative system, or even early religious doctrine? Vinca artifacts also reveal a striking awareness of abstraction and repetition. Many pottery pieces display repeated geometric patterns, spirals, and parallel lines. Are these purely decorative, or do they encode meaning? Could the repetition and arrangement of these symbols represent an early attempt to record information systematically, to communicate across generations, or to express cosmological ideas? The parallels to other early symbolic systems, from the Cascajal block in Mexico to the oracle bones in China, suggest a universal human impulse, the desire to capture, encode, and transmit knowledge. Yet, despite centuries of excavation, the Vinca symbols remain enigmatic. Scholars continue to debate their function, significance, and meaning. Some argue that they constitute a fully developed proto-writing system, perhaps the earliest in human history, while others view them as ritual or artistic expression without linguistic content. The lack of longer, coherent texts and the absence of a known key to interpretation leave us in a state of tantalizing uncertainty. How much of the Vinca cognitive landscape is irretrievably lost? Could there have been rules, syntax, or conventions we will never uncover, buried with the settlement's original inhabitants? The broader implications of the Vinca culture extend beyond symbols and figurines. The settlements demonstrate a level of social organization, planning, and technological proficiency that challenges assumptions about Neolithic Europe. Streets, drainage systems, and communal structures reflect collective effort and long-term planning, while evidence of ritual activity indicates that spiritual or social hierarchies may have shaped daily life. Were these early urban centers governed by elite families, councils, or spiritual leaders? And how did their symbolic systems reinforce social cohesion, ritual practice, or trade relationships? Speculative interpretations often venture even further. Some researchers propose that the Vinca symbols may represent an unbroken intellectual tradition, connecting ritual, administration, and cosmology in ways that prefigure later writing systems. Others suggest that the symbols might encode a worldview or set of principles unique to this region, now lost to time. Could these artifacts provide clues to a Neolithic cognitive revolution, where humans began to abstract, record, and manipulate concepts in ways that shaped the foundations of civilization? The materiality of the Vinca artifacts themselves is a reminder of human ingenuity. Clay, humble and ubiquitous, was transformed into durable records of thought, belief, and identity. The act of engraving symbols into pottery or figurines required planning, intention, and skill, suggesting a culture deeply engaged with abstraction, communication, and permanence. In these small, fragile objects, the human desire to transcend temporality and communicate across time is palpable. Ultimately, the Vinca culture invites reflection on both the achievements and limits of human memory and interpretation. Its settlements, symbols, and figurines offer glimpses into the minds of people who lived more than 7,000 years ago, revealing patterns of thought, ritual, and social organization that continue to resonate. And yet, much remains hidden, meanings obscured, intentions lost, and a cognitive world we can only partially reconstruct. Standing today among the ruins and artifacts of the Vinca settlements, one is struck by the same sense of wonder and uncertainty that accompanies encounters with other enigmatic civilizations. The symbols, etched into clay millennia ago, speak silently across time, inviting us to ask questions about human ingenuity, the origins of writing, and the ways in which early societies understood themselves and the cosmos. What knowledge lies buried beneath the soil, waiting to be rediscovered? And what does the existence of these symbols tell us about the earliest human attempts to encode experience, belief, and memory into tangible form? The Vinca culture, in its subtlety and complexity, reminds us that archaeological mysteries are not always grand in scale. They can reside in the smallest inscriptions, the humblest figurines, or the layout of a settlement long abandoned. Yet these seemingly modest traces hold the power to challenge our assumptions, to illuminate forgotten cognitive landscapes, and to connect us with the earliest stirrings of human symbolic thought. From the quiet clay tablets and figurines of the Vinca culture, where symbols and inscriptions hint at the earliest stirrings of human communication, our journey now turns once more to the Americas, to the dense jungles of southeastern Mexico. Deep within the ancient city of Palenque, nestled among towering ceiba trees and hidden beneath centuries of verdant overgrowth, lies one of Mesoamerica's most enigmatic burial sites, the tomb of the Red Queen. Unlike the sprawling ceremonial terraces of the Temple of the Moon or the intricate proto-writing of Vinca, this tomb is intimate, secluded, and shrouded in a deliberate sense of mystery, as if the very stones sought to guard the secrets of the woman interred within. Discovered in 1994 by Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruiz Luillier, the tomb sits within the Temple of the Inscriptions, a monumental pyramid dedicated to the great ruler Pakal the Great. Yet the Red Queen's chamber is tucked away in a side corridor, a hidden sanctuary accessed only through a narrow stairway carved deep into the pyramid's substructure. The name Red Queen derives from the striking red cinnabar powder that coated her remains, lending the skeletal figure an eerie, almost otherworldly glow. This vivid crimson dust, mingling with the earth and ancient textiles, immediately signals that her burial was not ordinary. It was deliberate, ceremonial, and steeped in symbolism. The tomb itself is a marvel of ancient engineering. Constructed of finely cut limestone blocks, fitted with precision, it is a sealed chamber that had remained untouched for more than a millennium. Within, the Red Queen rested upon a stone sarcophagus, surrounded by an array of offerings, ceramic vessels, jade ornaments, shell necklaces, and other grave goods meticulously arranged. The careful placement of these objects suggests a sophisticated ritual framework, one designed to honor, protect, and perhaps even guide the deceased in the afterlife. But beyond the tangible wealth, it is the deliberate isolation, the crimson burial, and the hidden location that imbue this tomb with its enduring mystery. Who was the Red Queen? Mainstream archaeology identifies her as a high-ranking noblewoman, possibly Pakal's wife, consort, or mother. Yet very little is definitively known. Unlike Pakal's tomb, whose inscriptions and iconography narrate his life and reign, the Red Queen's burial offers no explicit textual guidance. There is no stone relief explaining her lineage, her achievements, or her role in courtly affairs. The absence of such records has fueled speculation. Was she a powerful figure in her own right? A spiritual intermediary? Or perhaps a guardian of sacred knowledge? Her secrecy invites questions about Mesoamerican concepts of gender, power, and ritual. Scientific analysis has provided intriguing yet still incomplete insights. Forensic studies of her skeletal remains suggest she lived to an advanced age for her time, exhibiting evidence of illness or chronic conditions, yet she was buried with extraordinary care and resources. DNA and isotopic studies indicate dietary patterns and possible familial connections, but definitive identification remains elusive. The very elements that should illuminate her life, the artifacts, the remains, the context, also deepen the enigma. How much of her story is recorded in symbols, offerings, or placement patterns that we do not yet fully understand? The red cinnabar powder itself carries layers of meaning and questions. Cinnabar, derived from mercury sulfide, was a substance associated with vitality, death, and transformation in Mesoamerican ritual practice. Its application over her remains suggests not only reverence, but also a symbolic attempt to protect or empower the deceased in the transition to the afterlife. Yet it also raises practical mysteries. How did the ancient Maya acquire, transport, and apply this toxic mineral with such care? Were there specific ceremonial rites accompanying its use? And why was it reserved for this individual, while other high-ranking burials in Palenque employed different forms of interment? The artifacts surrounding the Red Queen further provoke reflection. Jade masks, intricately carved figurines, and finely painted vessels accompany her in her silent chamber. Each item was chosen, shaped, and positioned with intent, yet their meanings remain partially obscured. Are they merely offerings of wealth, symbols of status, or do they encode spiritual, political, or familial messages? Could certain motifs correspond to mythological narratives, cosmological principles, or secret knowledge accessible only to the initiated? The interplay between the tangible and the symbolic is a recurring theme in archaeological mysteries, where material evidence is inseparable from cultural imagination. Yet the tomb leaves questions unanswered, and perhaps unanswerable. Who exactly was she, and what was her influence within Palenque's hierarchy? What precise meanings lay behind each artifact, pigment, and chamber placement? Could there be chambers or materials still hidden, awaiting discovery? And more broadly, what does the care, secrecy, and symbolism of this burial reveal about Mesoamerican concepts of death, power, and transcendence? In contemplating the tomb of the Red Queen, we are drawn into a dialogue across centuries. The cinnabar-stained bones, the carefully positioned jade and ceramics, and the hidden corridors of the pyramid speak to a culture deeply engaged with mortality, memory, and mystery. As with other archaeological enigmas we have explored, from Vinci symbols to the oracle bones, from the Temple of the Moon to Palenque itself, the Red Queen reminds us that history is rarely a simple narrative. It is a layered, complex tapestry of human thought, belief, and practice, waiting to be interpreted, questioned, and marveled at. The tomb of the Red Queen, with its silent walls and crimson sheen, invites continued exploration. It challenges us to reconcile material evidence with imagination, science with speculation, and the known with the unknowable. What secrets still lie within the stone and earth? And what can this hidden chamber tell us about the human desire to honor, protect, and perhaps even transcend mortality itself? From the hidden corridors and crimson-stained remains of the tomb of the Red Queen in Palenque, where ritual, secrecy, and symbolism converge in profound mystery, we now turn once again to the banks of the Nile, to the ancient quarries of Aswan in southern Egypt. Here, amid the sun-bleached granite cliffs and the echoes of centuries, lies a monumental testament to ambition, labor, and, ultimately, interruption: the unfinished obelisk. Unlike the Red Queen's secluded chamber, the obelisk is a public and massive endeavor, visible even in its incomplete state, yet it carries with it questions that time has left unresolved, inviting speculation as to the intentions, techniques, and challenges of its creators. The unfinished obelisk, discovered in the early 20th century and lying in the northern region of the Aswan quarries, is a striking example of ancient Egyptian engineering brought abruptly to a halt. Carved directly from the bedrock, it was intended to become the largest obelisk ever erected, measuring over 42 meters in length and weighing approximately 1,200 tons. Yet a large crack running along its base caused work to cease, leaving it partially hewn and immovable, still tethered to the granite from which it was carved. Even in its incomplete form, the scale and precision are awe-inspiring. Fine grooves mark the worker's tools, channels cut for splitting, and the symmetry of its tapering form is evident despite the halted progress. The purpose of obelisks in ancient Egypt was profound. These towering monuments were more than architectural statements. They were symbolic conduits between the earthly and the divine, honoring pharaohs and gods alike. Yet the unfinished obelisk raises intriguing questions. What would have been the impact of such an enormous structure in its intended location? How did artisans and laborers plan to transport a single monolith weighing over 1,000 tons across the Nile to the temple sites of Karnak or Heliopolis? Modern engineering estimates and experiments suggest the Egyptians possessed remarkable knowledge of leverage, sledging techniques, and stone manipulation, yet the precise methods remain debated. Evidence from the site itself offers clues. Chisel marks and tool grooves reveal a systematic approach to granite extraction, one that required careful calculation and immense coordination. Workers carved channels around the intended obelisk, planning to detach it gradually from the bedrock. The use of wooden wedges, soaked in water to induce splitting, and the precise alignment of tools indicate an understanding of both material properties and geometric principles that is extraordinary for the period. Still, the abrupt halt raises a fundamental question. Was the fracture in the granite a simple accident, or could other factors, structural miscalculations, environmental conditions, or even ritual considerations, have influenced the decision to abandon the project? The unfinished state of the obelisk transforms it into a kind of living laboratory for archaeologists and engineers alike. Unlike completed obelisks, which offer little insight into quarrying techniques, this monolith allows scholars to study the entire process, from initial design to partial extraction. It provides a rare glimpse into the practical realities of ancient monumental construction, the physical labor, the trial and error, and the interplay between human intention and natural material. And yet, even with such evidence, many aspects remain enigmatic. How did the Egyptians envision raising an obelisk of this size vertically? How would it have been anchored securely, maintaining both stability and aesthetic symmetry? Beyond the technical, the unfinished obelisk also invites reflection on ambition, failure, and human ingenuity. The decision to abandon such an enormous undertaking was no doubt fraught with practical and symbolic implications. Was it considered a failure? Or was its very incompletion a lesson, a demonstration of the limits of human effort in the face of natural forces? Could the fracture itself have been interpreted as a sign or omen, connecting the practical realm of labor with the spiritual world of divine favor? The ancient Egyptians often viewed obstacles not as mere accidents, but as communications from higher powers, intertwining engineering, ritual, and belief. Speculative interpretations extend further. Some researchers propose that the unfinished obelisk may have influenced subsequent quarrying practices or even informed ritual architecture in ways we do not fully comprehend. Could its partial completion have been intentional, serving as a visible reminder of human aspiration and humility in the presence of divine order? Might it have been a teaching tool, a monumental illustration for artisans and priests of the balance between ambition and precision? Such theories remain speculative, yet they underscore the depth of cultural and symbolic thinking inherent in Egyptian monumental projects. The sheer scale of the obelisk also evokes contemplation of the workforce involved. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of skilled laborers, artisans, and overseers would have collaborated over months or years, coordinating every cut, every wedge, every measurement. The social, logistical, and economic organization required is staggering, and yet the human narrative behind these monumental endeavors is largely silent. Who were these workers, and how did they experience the triumphs and frustrations of this unfinished task? What knowledge and traditions were embedded in their hands, their tools, and their collective memory? In the broader context of archaeological mystery, the unfinished obelisk embodies the intersection of ambition, technique, and the unknown. It prompts reflection on the nature of incompletion, how unfinished works can reveal more than completed monuments, exposing the methods, intentions, and challenges behind the visible glory of civilization. The very cracks and halts, the unhewn surfaces, speak across time, inviting us to consider both what was attempted and what remains forever unrealized. As we stand, metaphorically, beside this colossal fragment of granite, the questions multiply. How many obelisks were planned, started, or abandoned that have left no trace? What knowledge about material, geometry, and labor has been lost? And what does the unfinished obelisk teach us about human interaction with the natural world, about the drive to impose order upon stone, and about the humility required when nature asserts its own will? The unfinished obelisk, lying prone yet majestic amid the Aswan quarries, is more than a testament to Egyptian engineering. It is a dialogue between human aspiration and the immutable qualities of granite, between ambition and limitation, between the known and the unknowable. It challenges us to consider the ingenuity required to attempt the impossible, the unforeseen forces that can halt even the most carefully planned endeavor, and the enduring questions that such monumental works leave behind. In contemplating this colossal yet incomplete artifact, we are reminded that not all mysteries are hidden or secreted in the earth. Some lie in plain sight, in the massive, rough-hewn blocks of stone, in the fractures that preserve the story of both skill and interruption. And like the Red Queen's Chamber or the oracle bones of ancient China, the unfinished obelisk invites us to look closer, think deeper, and remain attuned to the questions that history in its silence continues to pose. From the massive, sun-bleached granite of the unfinished obelisk in Aswan, where human ambition met the immutable resistance of stone, we travel once again across continents and millennia to the arid deserts and fertile river valleys of northern Peru. Here, amid the windswept dunes and the ruins of the ancient Moche civilization, lies the El Brujo Archaeological Complex, a site that continues to captivate scholars, archaeologists, and visitors alike. Among its temples and ceremonial platforms is a tomb of extraordinary significance, not only for its artifacts, but for the glimpses it offers into ritual, power, and the enigmatic world of Moche spirituality. The El Brujo tomb, discovered in 2006, lies beneath the Huacacao Viejo, a monumental adobe pyramid that rises starkly against the desert sky. Its location is both prominent and concealed, a paradox of visibility and secrecy that is characteristic of Moche ceremonial architecture. The tomb was carefully constructed, a subterranean chamber lined with reed mats and filled with layers of burial goods, textiles, and ornaments. Yet it was the extraordinary preservation and arrangement of the remains that drew global attention. Known popularly as the Lady of Kao, the tomb contained a high-ranking female figure whose regalia, tattoos, and burial context suggest she held authority typically reserved for male rulers in many contemporary societies. As one enters the imagined space of the tomb, it is immediately apparent that every detail was intentional. The walls, the floor, the position of the body, and the objects surrounding her convey a deliberate narrative of power, ritual, and spiritual significance. The body was adorned with gold and copper ornaments, intricate necklaces, and ceremonial attire, each piece meticulously arranged. Tattoos, visible on her arms and shoulders, depict serpents, felines, and other symbolic motifs, hinting at her spiritual and political authority. These images, etched permanently into the skin, suggest a sophisticated symbolic language, one that communicates status, cosmology, and perhaps even ritual responsibility. The tomb's context within the broader El Brujo complex adds further layers of intrigue. Huacachao Viejo itself is a canvas of painted adobe friezes, depicting scenes of sacrifice, ceremonial activity, and divine beings. How might the Lady of Kao have related to these images? Was she a priestess, a ruler, or both? And how did her authority interact with the broader socio-political structure of the Moche civilization, a society known for its highly organized hierarchies and elaborate ritual life? The answers remain elusive, embedded in material culture, iconography, and the subtleties of spatial arrangement. Artifacts within the tomb offer tantalizing clues. Ceramics, often painted with scenes of combat, sacrifice, or mythological narrative, surround her remains. Some depict rituals in which women appear as central figures, warriors, priestesses, or arbiters of divine will. Could these artifacts reflect her personal accomplishments, or do they serve a more symbolic function, encoding beliefs and societal ideals? The relationship between the material and the symbolic is complex, resisting simple interpretation. The artifacts preserve fragments of human intention, belief, and identity, yet the full meaning remains tantalizingly out of reach. Scientific analysis has added nuance, though not clarity, to the mystery. Forensic studies suggest that the Lady of Kao was relatively young at her death, yet her skeletal remains show evidence of both strength and labor, implying that her role was active, not ceremonial alone. The preservation of her tattoos, through chemical and environmental conditions, allows modern researchers to examine Moche iconography in ways previously impossible. Isotopic studies reveal aspects of her diet and origin, indicating access to high-status foods and possibly a life lived across multiple regions of Moche influence. Yet even these insights, as precise as modern science can render them, do not illuminate the full scope of her life, her power, or the rituals she oversaw. The tomb also raises questions about gender and authority in ancient societies. In many cultures of the Americas, political and spiritual leadership was male-dominated, yet the Lady of Cow's burial demonstrates an exceptional concentration of wealth, ritual paraphernalia, and symbolic power. Did she rule in her own right, or was her authority derivative of familial ties or ritual office? How did her gender shape the perception of her power, both within her society and in the construction of her tomb? These questions intersect with broader debates in archaeology about the role of women in early complex societies, challenging assumptions and offering glimpses into a social world far removed from contemporary expectations. Speculative interpretations extend even further. Some researchers propose that the Lady of Cow may have been central to ritual practices that reinforced societal cohesion, mediating between the human and divine worlds. Others suggest she may have been a military or political leader, her authority reinforced through ceremonial displays and burial iconography. Could her tattoos and the placement of ritual objects be a symbolic language, encoding knowledge of cosmology, ancestral lineage, or statecraft? Or were they primarily instruments of social memory, ensuring that her story would endure across generations, even as her name faded from written record? The tomb's discovery also prompts reflection on the nature of archaeological preservation and loss. The arid desert climate of northern Peru has allowed textiles, tattoos, and organic materials to survive for more than a millennium, fragile conduits of history that would have been lost elsewhere. Yet even in this extraordinary preservation, much remains invisible. The full range of ritual acts performed, the oral traditions recited, the songs sung in her honor. The tomb provides a frozen moment in time, yet the vibrancy of lived experience, the texture of sound, motion, and human interaction is largely irretrievable. Walking metaphorically through the tomb, considering the interplay of ritual, power, and material culture, one is struck by the convergence of human intention and natural preservation. Each artifact, each tattoo, and each layer of textile tells a story that is both tangible and elusive, simultaneously illuminating and concealing. The Lady of Cow, like the Red Queen in Palenque or the unfinished obelisk in Aswan, challenges our desire for certainty, asking us instead to consider questions that cannot be fully answered. And so the El Brujo tomb remains a site of enduring fascination. It is a space where archaeology, history, and speculation intertwine, where the material record invites inquiry and imagination in equal measure. Who was the Lady of Cow, really? What decisions shaped the construction of her tomb, the arrangement of her offerings, and the application of her tattoos? How did her life and death resonate through Moche society, and what remains hidden beneath the layers of sand, adobe, and time? In contemplating the tomb today, we confront the tension that lies at the heart of all archaeological mysteries. The balance between what can be observed and measured, and what remains intangible, whispered only in fragments of material culture, gestures frozen in time, and symbols whose meanings may never be fully known. The Lady of Cow, resting in her meticulously prepared chamber, challenges us to listen closely, to question carefully, and to remain open to the enduring enigma of human history. The El Brujo tomb, in its preservation, symbolism, and mystery, exemplifies the subtle power of archaeological discovery to connect us with the ambitions, beliefs, and lives of those who came long before, while reminding us that the past is never fully accessible, always leaving room for wonder, reflection, and ongoing exploration.